All right, here we go.
Are you recording?
We are recording.
Where are we going, Chris? Where are we currently on the way to?
The Source family. We're headed to the Source.
We are going to the Philosophical Research Society.
Wait, what?
Or the University for Philosophical Research, which is...
Oh, is that weirdo thing you found the other day that has like a bunch of different weirdo stuff?
It is an occultist reference library in the lovely city of Los Angeles. And tonight they are hosting a screening of the documentary The Source Family.
And we're going there because this is season 5, and we decided that we're going to go places in season 5. We're going to actually go to cults and experience all their culty goodness.
So there's going to be a lot of people who were members of this group there that are going to be talking about the movie that they made. There's going to be a book signing. There's going to be rituals, apparently. There's going to be Q&A. There's going to be a reception. So there's going to be opportunity for us to like mingle with folks who were actually a part of this thing back in the 70s. And, you know, hopefully we'll come away with some insight that we can then bring to you in the rest of the podcast.
I'm most excited for the rituals.
I don't know how the hell I'm going to turn left here. But what the hell?
Are we live?
I just hit record on the recorder.
Are we, fuck it, we're doing it live?
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Okay, this isn't live though, because this is being recorded several days in advance.
Well, we're live, you and I, currently.
Everything that's currently happening is live. That doesn't mean that it's a live show. We're good at this. I'm excited to be back.
I'm so excited to be back. I will say, oh man, it's hard to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah,
I'm trying to write the script for this one, and I was like, oh my God, how do we do this? But now that we're sitting here in front of our microphones, I'm so happy to be back. And
We're back, baby.
Before we get into anything, I just want to say, so many of you reached out during our between seasons hiatus just to let us know that you were eagerly waiting the podcast return, and that was really nice. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I really appreciate it. I don't even like
spending time with myself, so I don't know what you guys' problem is, but thank you. And it's season 5. Cinco de season. Oh.
How have we done so many seasons?
That's a lot of seasons. I don't know.
It's a lot of seasons.
We've been doing it. That means it's our 5th year doing this. Like, the world was a different place 5 years ago.
The world was a different place 5 years ago. I was a different person 5 years ago.
We were all different people. I'm a tulpa of myself from 5 years ago.
And the way I view groups I would call cults now, oh my God, so different.
Yeah.
Like just light years of difference.
I forget who I was talking to the other day. I think it was my like ultra nerd board game group that I play with. But like, I think maybe my favorite part of doing the podcast is how much we've learned. Like we've learned just scads of information while doing this podcast. It's that part's been really rewarding and fun.
This podcast, by the way, is called Cult or Just Weird.
It is.
I'm Kayla.
I really feel like at this point, it's really just everything's just weird.
It's all weird.
This is the podcast is just weirds that sometimes people call cults. And I'm Chris.
Usually we give a little background on who we are. We should probably do it because, you know, season 5, I don't know, maybe we have new listeners. Who knows? Like I said, I'm Kayla. I'm a television writer and internet addict.
I'm Chris, and I have been doing personal projects for a while, but before that, I was a data scientist and game designer. But like now I'm more of like an artist, I guess.
Yeah.
What am I now?
You're Mr. Art Man.
How do I say something that doesn't make it sound like I'm an unemployed slob?
You're a game designer and a creative producer.
That's true. And actually we are built. Well, this is okay. I don't want to pimp our other projects on here, but I am doing those things. I am making a game on the side. So,
but we're here to talk about cults
right,
and weirds. And as you may have heard from our intro, we've got a different thing a little bit of a different thing going this season. What do you want to say about that?
So ever since I guess since last season, maybe the end of season 3, we've kind of been on this kick of like, maybe our seasons should have a theme. I guess that like when you go long enough, it's like, man, we got to differentiate each season somehow. So last season it was look for the helpers, like try to focus more on people doing good things and, ways and techniques. We covered media literacy and ways to combat online disinformation. We brought people on to talk about self-care. We even talked about suicidality in one of our episodes. So we tried to focus last season's theme on that. And then this season's theme is experiential. So this season's theme is we're going to go do the thing.
Kind of in the same vein as like, going to the Etheria Society or going to the Self-Realization Fellowship. We want to do more of those kinds of hands-on primary source topics that we have plentiful access to. We live in Los Angeles, which is just like...
It's like ground zero for this shit.
Yeah, cult hotbed. And, we have access to these things, so why not go experience them for you, our listeners at home, and let you know what we think.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel like at the end of season 3, we had some stuff that was like hinting at our theme for season 4.
Right.
And then at the end of season 4, we had some stuff, Etheria specifically, I'm thinking of, that hinted at what we're doing for season 5. So, and then like a way to think of it too is if anybody's a fan of the Oh No, Ross and Carrie podcast, that's kind of what they do. Like they pick a topic and then they go do the thing and then they talk about it.
And they're wildly successful, so we're copying them.
Right, exactly. And I have a sub theme for the season where I'm going to try not to like mouth breathe into the microphone as much because I feel like there's a lot of just like,
yeah,
like when you're talking.
You do kind of Beavis and Butthead breathe.
Yeah. Like I don't think that I do it. And then I listen to the edit and I'm like, oh my God.
The thing is, I will tell you this as an outside observer, it's not mouth breathing.
What is it?
That's
is it
your
nose
breathing, man.
So I'm a nose breather?
Somehow you're a
is that
heavy
better?
nose breather.
I don't know if that's better.
I don't know either.
Oh, well. But yeah, that's our theme for this season. We have another change. We are also changing the format this season.
Ooh.
So all 4 previous seasons, we have done 20 episodes. We have done 1 episode every 2 weeks from April to December. We're still going to be doing April to December, but it's going to be 10 episodes instead of 20, and we'll be doing it every 4 weeks instead of every 2 weeks. So the hope here is that this allows us to spend more time on individual episodes and make better content, and it's also better for our sanity. But we wouldn't do it if we didn't think it would also drive a quality improvement. Plus, there's like a glut of content out there that we don't want to like abuse you guys. I know we've talked about this like
since the beginning. I did a 6-hour episode on Cicada 3301 or however long it was.
Yeah, and like I did a 3-hour episode on anti-vax, and then 2 weeks later it was like another like 2-hour episode. And I think about like one of my favorite podcasters is Dan Carlin, and he has super long episodes, right? He has like 15-hour long or whatever episodes.
We won't do that.
But he only releases an episode like once every 6 months. When we're doing multiple hour episodes and it's every 2 weeks, it kind of feels like that's a bit much. And we know you guys have other things to do, like watch streaming content. So that's the main thing. It's about the glut of content.
It's mostly about the glut of content. Yeah. Actually, I do think it is mostly about, we want to make sure if we're going to these places and we're able to have that kind of access, this new format, this new schedule will hopefully allow us to, where it's appropriate, develop relationships with the people that we're going to visit, talk to them in person, maybe have, those kinds of interviews on the show. Not trying to predict what future episodes are going to be like, but having more time to spend on each individual episode will allow us to go deeper into each topic.
Exactly. So those are our 2 big changes. Kayla?
Yes.
Do you have any like business or off-season rants that you want to talk about or anything? I have a few rants. I have some ranting and raving. Do you want to rave?
The Waco documentary on Netflix is not worth watching.
Oh, really? I thought that one of my rants was to talk to you about that exact documentary. But
I don't think that was a nice thing for me to say. Of course, it's worth watching. It just, I have this problem with cult-related content. we've run into this problem as well in our making our own episodes. It's a hard thing to do. I want cult-related content to talk about the actual system of belief. And it's hard to do, but like, that wasn't in the Waco documentary. I wanted that in the Waco documentary. Tell me what the hell they're actually believing. It's interesting. It's cool. It's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know. I tried to do that with this episode, so we'll see how it goes.
Well, what was interesting to you about that documentary? Like, we had a discussion earlier today about like Jesus versus David Koresh, because he said he was the second coming of Jesus.
He did say this.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that. Like one of the...
Are you talking about the thing that I said where it's like if Jesus actually... So, okay, one of the fundamental tenets of Christianity is that Jesus will return.
Right.
He said
Second
that.
coming,
he was like, I'm
right.
coming back. And since that time, there have been multiple's not even the right word, many
Hundreds, maybe thousands.
many people who have said, yep, that's me. I am Jesus. Come back. I'm the Messiah. Let's go.
Yeah, they sort of left the door open for that kind of thing.
Yeah, they did. Which, I don't know. Is it a feature or is it a bug? I don't know. And most times, a lot of times I'm sure these people are ignored, but a lot of times the person who claims to be Jesus is dealt with violently by society.
Right. It's not...
They're either discredited or
People
killed.
don't go like, oh, shit, it is.
Yeah. Like David Koresh was raided by ATF and, 51-day standoff that resulted in the building getting burnt down with him and his followers inside. They died. Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert for Waco.
Yeah. In case you guys didn't remember.
I don't think David Koresh was Jesus come back, personally.
What?
But I was saying this while you and I were watching it, like, if and when Jesus returns, we're going to kill him.
How do we know we haven't already?
How do we know we haven't already? I mean, we did it the first time.
Actually, you know what? Now that we're talking through it again, like, we also killed him the first time. So
Yeah.
that wouldn't be, I don't know.
Presumably he wouldn't be killable the second time because he's like...
Is he like, he's got superpowers or whatever?
Well, he's not... I'm assuming he would not be coming back as human Jesus. He'd be coming back as God Jesus.
Isn't he human?
I don't know.
This is where it gets really confusing.
I need a theologian.
This podcast, this is not a religion podcast. I would say the official position of this podcast is more along the atheist line. So we don't actually think Jesus is coming back.
But if he
for
were...
for a large swath of society, the real belief is, the actual belief is that he's coming back. And it's just weird that like, it doesn't seem like there's ever a case, like what would it take for society at large to actually believe that that's true?
This is him. It just seems like cults spring up around the people who say that they're Jesus, and then it either dies out or that's dealt with violently. And to be really, I don't know what it would take for...
What's funny is
what it would take.
This brings up something that I've been thinking about a little more lately, which is it's about like, how can we agree with each other on the truth? Actually, I guess that's not lately. That's like what we talk about on the show all the time. Like, what is true? How do we agree with each other? But this, like the context in which I was thinking of it is about science. And we usually refer to scientific method as a means to discovering truths. But I actually think that it's not a means to discovering truths. I think that there are actually many means to discovering truths. You can like intuitively arrive at a truth. You can arrive at truths via like reading or listening to somebody else. You don't actually have to do the science yourself. But what science is a means to agreeing on truths. It's not a means of discovering. It's a means of agreeing, right? There's lots of things out there that are true. You may claim something that's true. And then I say, well, why should I believe you? And you say, because I did these experiments that have been independently verified, here's the evidence. That's a reason for me to agree with you about a truth. It's less important to me. I think the less important part is that maybe you discovered something. The more important part, at least when we're talking about like scientific method, not necessarily like exploration, but scientific method, the more important thing is that it gives me a reason to believe it's true. So that the reason that made me think of that is, again, hundreds, maybe thousands of people have claimed to be Jesus, right? And we sit here and go like, well, maybe one of them was. I don't know. Like, how do we know?
How do we know?
And we kind of come back to that point of like just making that claim and saying, well, there was going to be a second coming, and trust me, it's me, because I said so. That's legitimately why the rest of us don't say, oh shit, it is Jesus. Like
Right.
there's some underlying, even for like theists, even for like non-materialists, like, quote unquote anti-science, like theists, there's still this underlying like prove it. And I think that is kind of like where the rubber meets the road with these guys. Is like they generally can't, not generally, they have not been able to prove that they are Jesus. And I don't know what would constitute
Gotta turn that
proof.
water into wine.
Yeah, I think maybe some miracles or something. I don't know. But it just made me think about that. Like science is not a means to discovering truth. It's a means to agreeing on truths between each other.
You should write that in a book.
I'm so, that was like just a smart thing.
We should get a book deal.
Ooh, yeah, we should.
People need more of our thoughts.
I should buy a boat.
I should buy a book. Good point. Great point. How can you use that to segue us into our topic for today?
I don't even own a Segway.
I wish I did.
Oh, I don't know. You're putting me on the spot. Well,
we're talking about a group.
As you heard in our little, as you heard in the cold open, we are talking about the Source family today. And the charismatic leader involved in said Source family, one Father Yod. I keep saying Yod. I kept saying Father Zod.
You did keep saying Father Zod.
I kept confusing him with General Zod from Superman. But anyway, I think that, so he had a period where there was some like, he wasn't saying he was Jesus, but
he said he was Jesus.
There was some, he said he was Jesus?
He said,
well, this is where your research comes in.
He said we're all Jesus.
Oh, that's a cop-out. There was some claim of divinity that I doubt he was able to prove in a scientifically sound manner. That's my segue, and I'm sticking to it.
Love it. So how do we want to structure this? Do we want to kind of give just like a brief explanation for the event that we went to, or do we want to just dive right into what this group was?
Well, let's just dive into the group. Let's talk about the research that you did. And then after that, we will talk about the thing that we went to.
I am very excited.
It's the 1-2 punch of research and experience.
We're good at that.
Kick ass.
I'm really excited to talk about this group because it is such a template or like a prototype or like a platonic ideal of what mainstream society pictures when faced with the word cult. Like, this is the kind of thing that we're thinking about. We're thinking about a group with a leader, and they're all walking around with hippie hair and white robes and preaching about free love and having belief in aliens and weird spiritual shit, right?
New Age mysticism, vegan joints in LA.
That's exactly what we're talking about today. The Source family sprang up in the 1970s in Los Angeles, had a bearded leader. The members were all beautiful flower children types with flowing robes. Extensive meditators, health food advocates, believed in the dawning of the age of Aquarius. They were basically the musical Hair personified.
Cult Hair.
And they had some far out beliefs and practices, and their timeline is brief but wild. It's like, this is what we're thinking of when we think of like classic cult. So let's get into it, starting at the beginning. James Edward Baker was born on July 4th, 1922 in Cincinnati, Ohio. 40 years later, he would be known as Father Yod by his 140 followers at his wildly successful restaurant, The Source, on the Sunset Strip in West Hollywood. So how the fuck did he get there?
I think that he came from Krypton. Oh, wait, sorry. I keep confusing with Zod.
Zod.
Sorry, yep.
According to Baker and his followers, as a child, he was awarded the title of, quote, world's strongest boy.
Wait, hold on. Is that a real title?
I have no idea what that means. I could not really find anything on it. There might be some old like newspaper articles about it, but again, like, I don't know who's awarding world's strongest boy. I don't know how they're measuring that.
Yeah, can I just tell you that just sends my bullshit detector like way into the red?
World's strongest boy. He was also an accomplished archer, which I think is true.
Oh.
He was an expert in jujitsu and eventually had to register his hands as lethal weapons. Again, there are newspaper articles about this. I cannot speak to the veracity of them, but there's literally newspaper articles of like, this guy judo chops people to death. Stay away.
Oh man, it's like Austin Powers.
Oh, he did say judo chop, didn't he?
Yeah, he says judo chop, and then he does a really deadly judo chop.
That might have been, like, not unrelated to this.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Jim Baker. This is also not Jim Baker, the like televangelist. This is a different Jim Baker.
Yeah, I was very briefly confused about that when we were at the compound.
He served in the Marine Corps in World War II and claimed to have been awarded the Silver Star, which is the third highest military decoration for valor in combat. However, I don't think the Corps actually has a record of this, so take that as you will. After serving in the military, he turned to a life of crime and began robbing banks.
Ooh, robbing.
He was
some
a bank
old school
robber
shit.
and like got rich off of this.
Hell yeah.
But he also got in trouble. And with his lethal weapon hands, he actually did kill 2 men on 2 separate occasions that were occasions of self-defense. I will note that the second of these occasions was a combination of judo chop and bullet to the head. So
Okay, hold on. I think the cause of death there is clear.
Judo chop was what you're saying.
Yeah, obviously. These guys, you said self-defense?
These were occasions of self-defense.
Or like air quote self-defense? Like, did they have it come? Like, how much should I hate him for killing people?
I think that I can't answer that question for you. He did serve jail time for the second murder, or for the second killing. I won't say murder. So he spent time in prison for it. So he served his debt to society in that way.
Okay.
He was legally married 4 times and eventually moved to Los Angeles with hopes of becoming a stuntman. I think he would have killed it.
Yeah, that sounds like what he was actually meant for.
Instead, he opened 2 instantly popular restaurants in WeHo.
That's very related to stunt work, you know?
It was the 60s, man. It was a weird time. The 2 restaurants were called the Aware Inn and the Old World, and they were frequented by celebrities and featured healthy, natural foods. Like, this was a passion of Baker's. He had relationships, or supposedly had personal relationships with people like Paul Bragg, who you might know from Bragg's Foods. I don't know.
No.
Paul Bragg is like a big name in the natural foods movement. He has like the apple cider vinegar we have in our fridge is Bragg's. Amino acids, we could do an entire episode on Paul Bragg. He is also a charlatan and like said you should drink.
But we have his vinegar.
Whatever.
So.
But we have his vinegar. Anyway, he was a big health food guru charlatan. Maybe had a relationship with Jim Baker. Like, so this guy was also into the healthy food kind of movement that was springing up at the time.
So is the thought that he was kind of like riding that wave of health food popularity? Like, is that why his restaurants were instantly popular?
He was an early buy-in to this. It wasn't like mainstream popular at the time. He was like cutting edge of introducing it to like
right as that wave was
society.
Starting to swell.
Yeah, he was surfing. Soon, one of his divorces led him on a spiritual journey, and he eventually became a student of someone named Manly P. Hall. Remember that name. It will come back.
Ooh, I will remember it.
Manly P. Hall was a prolific esoteric philosopher and writer. And he also became a student of someone named Yogi Bhajan, who was a prominent Sikh spiritual leader who really focused on Kundalini yoga teachings. We've talked about Kundalini yoga before. It's an Aetherius. It's in Self-Realization Fellowship. You might smell a pattern.
Now just to be clear, that's the meditative kind of yoga versus like the sketchy kind of yoga?
It's about, and I have a very lay understanding of Kundalini yoga, but it is about the idea that there is a type of energy that rests at the bottom of your spine called Kundalini, and Kundalini yoga is about using meditative practices to bring that energy up your spine, essentially up through your chakras. And like the higher you can get your Kundalini, the like more enlightened you are. So if you remember with Aetherius Society, George King was supposedly able to like get his Kundalini up into his crown chakra like lightning fast.
Naturally. Yeah. I call that the bottom of my spine. I call that my butt energy.
His butt energy. Side note, Yogi Bhajan was wildly popular with American hippies at the time due to his teachings on vegetarianism, keeping your hair long, contributing to world peace through meditation, and belief in the coming Aquarian age, and he would posthumously be accused of sexual abuse by hundreds of his female followers.
Okay, so just like the usual suite of things.
And again, that's Yogi Bhajan, not Jim Baker. At this time, Jim Baker also got really into LSD and speed.
Ooh, that's a combo.
It is a combo. I think it probably had a hand in him losing the Old World restaurant. He lost it as part of one of his divorce settlements. And so he opened a new restaurant, and this is when he opened The Source on Sunset Boulevard. The hippest of all his endeavors so far. The natural foods vibes from his other restaurants, like, they turned it up to 11 here.
Okay.
And patrons ranged from, like, Marlon Brando to John Lennon to Julie Christie, like, celebrities instantly. Like, the who's who of hip Hollywood was like, yeah, this is our restaurant. Let's go here.
And again, just so I'm clear, like, the celebrities flocked here. Why? Because it became instantly popular? Because he was on this bleeding edge
There were
of
no
health
other
food?
restaurants like this. Like, there were health food restaurants were not really a thing at the time. Like, now, especially in Los Angeles, every other fucking restaurant is like, come eat our salads, Cafe Gratitude, I am blah, 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 blah. At the time, this wasn't really a thing. Yeah, Cafe Gratitude definitely
has some DNA of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yet another relationship ended for him, and he had, like, an epic midlife crisis. From which the Source family was born. So he has this midlife crisis. He's had these teachings from a Western esoteric master. He's had these teachings from an Eastern esoteric master. He kind of brought all of his experiences together. He had these crazy experiences of robbing banks and killing men, brought everything together and created his own spiritual belief system.
Based around bank robbery.
Based solely around bank robbery, which he shared with others and created his own quote-unquote spiritual family, the Source family.
It wasn't based on bank robbery.
It was not based on bank robbery. It was based out of this restaurant, essentially. The restaurant and the group were essentially synonymous for most of its life. Like other spiritual gurus of the time, Baker's teachings consciously melded Western esotericism with Eastern spirituality. He was specifically influenced by a theosophist writer from the Victorian era named Mabel Collins, who... He studied this writer under Manly P. Hall, who we mentioned up top. Mabel contributed greatly to Madame Blavatsky's body of work. So, like, we've talked...
Oh, I know that name.
We've never done an episode on her, but we've talked about Madame Blavatsky, basically the mother of modern theosophy. That's as much as we'll get into.
Theosophy, we talked about this in the Aetherius episode, right? Theosophy is like New Age. It's like proto-New Age.
Yeah. It's the basis of, like, all New Age thought,
all
specifically
like
in America.
Thought,
yeah. But Mabel Collins was this specific writer who he studied, and she was known to the Source family as their spiritual grandmother. I think I say this later when I say it here. Father Yod said that he had, in a past life, he had had an intimate relationship with a version of Mabel Collins, one of her past lives as well. So this is why he had such a connection to her.
That's a good sort of appeal to authority there. I like that.
I also want to describe how Jim Baker looked at this time and how he kind of looked as he cultivated this group. He was very tall. I forget how tall exactly, but I think like between 6 foot and 6'3". So tall. He was a tall man.
Nobody's going to get that. Nobody's going to get, I almost said it. But.
He was a tall man. And if anybody knows what that's from, email us, culturejustweird@gmail.com, and we'll give you something. We'll give you a prize.
You get a prize for sure.
He had a big bushy beard. He had big long hair. He had piercing eyes. He wore like white suits and eventually would graduate to like robes. He would like wrap his hair up sometimes. Like he looked like a cult leader.
Yeah.
He looked like a big Jesus guy.
He's a striking figure. We will definitely be putting photos of him on our Instagram.
It really wasn't difficult for Baker to begin building his spiritual following. Like he had this business with an audience already built in. So this is when he began calling himself Father Yod, and he started to host meditations and classes.
Where did Yod come from?
I don't know. Hold that thought.
Okay.
I kind of know.
Okay.
So he starts holding these meditation classes, basically free to the public. Anybody could attend. And these classes are where Father Yod began sharing his specific brand of teachings and where he cultivated this spiritual family. The folks who began following Yod's teachings... Cultivated. The people who began following his teachings also began working at the restaurant. And these were often young men and women of the hippie persuasion. Not everybody, but most people were young. Like the women were working as servers. The men were working as cooks. And a lot of the media at the time and even today talk about this group by describing them like as attractive or beautiful. Like they're really focused on how these people looked and presented. It's like, my God, they were just so gorgeous.
It's because they all had long hair.
It's because they all had long hair. Like they were deeply hip. They had long uncut hair. There wasn't like a lot of makeup. It was very like, oh, we're such natural beauties. They wore flowing dresses, flowing robes. And this kind of front-facing presentation of like, look how hot and cool we are, that attracted even more.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I'm like
patronage to
if
the
somebody's
establishment.
like, "Do you want to join us?" I'd be like, "Shit, am I hot?"
I don't even mean join the cult or join the group.
Oh.
Obviously, that did, but brought people to the restaurant. As well,
so
which brought people into the group.
Kind of like a Hooters, but instead of
it's a hippie Hooters.
The hippie Hooters. Okay, so before you said like the Source family and the Source restaurant are kind of inextricable, and it sounds like the reason for you saying that is that a lot of the people working there were students of his.
Correct.
And now, did they all live together? Or?
We'll get to that.
I see.
Almost immediately.
Right now.
Right now. I just want to say before we get to that, it's noted in a lot of places. I did not verify this number, but it is repeated over and over, not just by the group, that at the height of its popularity, the restaurant brought in about $10,000 a day.
A day?
Like it was very...
$10,000 1970 money?
I don't know if it's $10,000 1970 money or $10,000 adjusted for inflation.
Scheisse.
Or whatever that means. What am I saying?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's $10,000 today dollars or $70s dollars. If you don't feel comfortable about accepting a number that's just randomly pulled out of the air, just know that this was a very popular restaurant to the point that
lucrative.
Father Yode became very wealthy and needed a place to house his growing flock of followers. So he reached out to his old teacher, Manly P. Hall, put him in touch with a real estate agent, and that led him to be able to purchase a literal mansion. He purchased something that's called the Chandler Mansion, which is in Los Feliz in Los Angeles. And this is a 24-room estate. Man, with like a pool and like stuff.
I wish that I was so wealthy that I could like collect human beings and like buy them a house and stick them there.
And this is like, it looked beautiful. It was like built in the 1910s and it was owned by Harry Chandler. I think it was built by Harry Chandler, who was like a former owner of the Los Angeles Times. Like it was a...
Oh, so it was like a famous house kind of?
Yeah, and it's still around. I think it might be for sale right now. I don't know.
Ooh, let's get it.
Manly P. Hall also...
The Culturducken weird mansion.
Oh my God. If you want to come live with us in a mansion, let's all pool our dollars.
Oh God, no.
This is how we're going to make our cult. Manly P. Hall also gave names to Father Yode of individuals like who might be good additions to the family because...
so they were like back and forth for a while.
Manly P. Hall... Should I spoil it?
No.
Okay, I won't spoil it. Manly P. Hall was a very extensive, prolific teacher as well. So he had a lot of followers and he knew like, oh, you'd be interested in this thing. So he was able to funnel people over there.
I see.
According to the Source family. There were other living areas for Father Yode, his current wife, Robin, and their followers. And this included, there was a living space above the Source restaurant. It was like they converted the attic into a living space.
The Source loft.
There was like a pyramid / teepee that was in the backyard of the Source family. I think there was at a certain point, there was like people living in vans outside. And eventually they were also able to purchase a second house for the group. So the Chandler Mansion was known as the mother house, and then the second house they bought was known as the father house.
I see. And the vans, I assume, were VW because they were all flower children?
In my heart, they were.
Okay.
As Father Yode continued to amass followers and thus new workers at his restaurant, the family grew to about 140, 150 people.
Actually, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When you say workers and followers, were they paid for their labor?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. My speculation would be that considering these folks thought of themselves as a very close-knit family, a community, a communal group, communal like living together group, I'm assuming the money that was made all went into a shared pot.
Side eye.
One thing that I do know about the group is that whether or not at the restaurant, Father Yode did encourage particularly the men, who he called his sons, SUNS, to work.
That's cute.
To work elsewhere. Like,
oh, really?
Working was a big part of being in this group. Like, you kind of had to have a job. And I don't get the sense that it was like, you better have a job to give me money. It was part of the teachings of like being productive and like contributing.
Productive? This is starting to sound really normy. I don't care for it.
We'll get into it. So I don't know. I think that people probably had to have access to some of their own funds, just given that like people were buying musical instruments and had to clothe themselves and things like that. But it also probably went into communal pots as well. Like these guys were literally, they had a commune.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I guess it's a little bit blurry there, but I was just wondering if it was, I was just hoping
it could also be a
like,
cult situation where he's taking all their money. I don't know.
Yeah. I almost feel like for like weirdly, it feels more okay if he pays them at the restaurant for the job that they do at the restaurant. And then separately, he takes all their money as their cult leader. That almost feels like okay to me.
It's not okay.
But like compared to the situation of like what I'm wondering is was it like they had to basically be like working for free at the restaurant? Like that, I mean, that would be
it would be working for room and board, which I don't think is necessarily good or right. Sus. I think that what you're getting at is that it can be complicated or problematic if your spiritual leader is also your employer.
Yeah, actually, I didn't realize that's what I was getting at, but it totally is.
We don't know the details of that, but, keep that in mind as we discuss. So like I said, during this time, the group grew to be about 140, 150 people.
Okay.
All living in the same house. And granted, it's a 24-room estate.
Still, though, 24.
But this was like a functioning family of 140 people.
That's like more than 5 people per room. And I'm assuming some of those are like kitchen and living room, not like all bedrooms.
I guess. I don't know. It's a lot of folks who were in this group look back on these times fondly.
Well, to be fair, like dorm living is pretty crowded, and I look back on that pretty fondly. So, yeah.
The group continued to hold meditation classes for the public to join, and also had other services such as like astrology readings and tarot and things like that. Mm-hmm. They would form a number of psychedelic jam bands with members playing instruments while Father Yod sang, and all of the music was performed spontaneously. All of the singing was performed spontaneously.
Ooh, is that what the shrooms and speed were for?
They did not take drugs in this group except for one thing. Weed, but it was called the sacred herb, and it was not abused. It was used very specifically. Like we're gonna, I think, get into some specific beliefs, but from what I remember, it was like you would take essentially a ritualized drag toke of the weed as part of your like morning routine or whatever. Like it was ritualized. We're like
the ritualized wake and bake.
Father Yod lit it for you, or another person lit it for you, and you would have one inhale, and that was your intake of the sacred herb.
I see.
It wasn't like we're on drugs all the time. You weren't on one of the like tenets of this group was like no drugs, no drinking.
Again, very normy.
Yeah.
But I guess the weed, I don't know.
And it was like 1970s weed too. So like, was it even good? I don't know.
Barely weed.
The most well-known iteration of the family's band is called the Yehovah 13. And Yehovah was the family's name for God. Kind of sounds like Yahweh.
Like Yahweh, yeah.
This band performed around Los Angeles. They put out some of their own albums, and like those are collector's items for like vinyl enthusiasts today. With this and other endeavors, the family maintained its connections to Hollywood and the entertainment industry, so Yod kept up his friendships with Marlon Brando, with Steve McQueen, Jack LaLanne, if you remember him. He was like a bodybuilder, right? He was like a healthy living guy.
Familiar.
Paul Bragg, we talked about.
I have heard of the other guys, though.
Yeah. The graphic designers who worked on the flyers the group used to advertise its meditation classes were a couple who designed albums for artists like Neil Diamond.
Ooh.
They used a gong during their meditations that had been used on the Dr. Zhivago soundtrack.
Wow. I thought you were going to say it was from the Gong Show.
It was not from
the Gong Show 60s or 70s?
No idea. Not sure.
I feel like we should have like interviewed our parents again for this one.
Yeah. The second of their houses, the Father House, would eventually be sold to the band ABBA.
What?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
According to the group, they were like, oh yeah, that house got sold to ABBA, and P.S. ABBA in like some Middle Eastern language means father. So like it's all connected.
Ooh, and also they kind of dressed like the cult members.
They kind of did. One of the members of Yehovah 13 had previously been known as Sky Saxon of the semi-well-known band The Seeds. And the restaurant continued bringing in crowds that like wanted to see and be seen. It was a scene, SCENE.
I am very sad that I lived at a time when I did not get to go to the Source restaurant because it sounds awesome.
I know.
Like the whole time I'm just like, God damn it. Is this still around? It's not still around, is it? Damn
no,
it.
The Source is, I was just looking at it on Google Maps.
It's at a gas station now?
I think it might be a Coffee Bean.
I
could be wrong. It's either a Coffee Bean or it's like a Mexican restaurant called Cabo Cantina. I'm not sure.
Okay. Not quite as funny as if it was like an Exxon Mobil, but still pretty funny.
I think it might be a Coffee Bean.
I mean, the thing is, though, like, even if it were still there, like, you couldn't, like...
It's not going to be the same vibe. Yeah, it's not going to be the same vibe.
They'd have you, like, order on an app and everything.
God. So that's the restaurant. That's, like, how this group came to be. But what about the actual beliefs of the group? You know, we talked about the sacred herb. We talked about kind of some of the stuff. But, like, what exactly was Father Yod teaching his followers that kept them so enamored that they left their, like, regular lives? Like, these people were leaving their lives behind to become 24/7, 365 a day part of this spiritual family where they all lived together. Every single day was like being with Father, being with each other, doing the spiritual stuff, working in the restaurant. Very different from what like standard regular life was at the time.
That's pretty intense. I don't know if I could handle having 150 other friends. I don't know.
I can't even handle the amount of friends that I do have, and I love them all.
Well, I mean, what about our parasocial friends? Because if that's the case, we have thousands.
That's true. Hey, friends.
Hey, everyone.
Some knowledge of the beliefs of the Source family was shared with the public at their open meditation classes, as well as in a documentary that was made about the group and a book that was published by the group.
Oh, a book, you say?
I do say those things. But a lot of the knowledge was also closed, like only available to members of the family. So you would only get to learn certain things if you joined.
Okay, that's fair.
It's safe to say that, like other groups we talked about, this belief system was a bit of a grab bag. Again, drawing from Western occultism, drawing from Eastern traditions. Kundalini energy, Kundalini yoga is very prominent. This belief in the age of Aquarius, which is, I don't think I've said that before, but that is the belief that humanity is entering a new psychic age that is a time of great spiritual change and enlightenment.
This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
It's like, just think about what we learned in Aetherius episode and SRF and Teal Swan and Ramtha. Like, you've got a decent idea of the kinds of beliefs we're dealing with here, but right. I do want to dive in the huge. I do want to dive into the specific beliefs that I was able to glean from some primary resources.
Wait, so we were coming out at which age are we coming out of? Pisces, right?
Bitch ass? I don't know.
Well, no wonder the age of Aquarius is better than bitch ass.
Probably Pisces. Pisces is before Aquarius. I think it was
Aquarius, Pisces because
yeah.
like something Jesus fish. I don't know.
Oh.
Like I
something Jesus
Don't
fish.
quote me on that. I think I got that from something on the internet that is probably
bullshit.
Don't
listen to the internet.
Just don't listen to the show. We haven't said that yet. Don't listen to this show. I think before that it was the age of Aries? You know what?
Why would Aries be before Pisces? Wouldn't it be Sagittarius? It's the last. So it goes. Oh wait, what's before Pisces?
I don't know.
Pisces might be the first in the.
Maybe it goes backwards. Because it goes Pisces then Aries.
No, it doesn't go Pisces then Aries.
Pisces Aries. Yeah, it is because I'm a Pisces Aries cusp. Well, I don't know if I
does Pisces come after me? Then Pisces is not before Aquarius. Then it would be something else.
All right.
This conversation is dumb. So the book I just mentioned opens with something called The Birth Litany, and I will read it for you now. And
how are you going to read it for us, Kayla?
Because we have the book.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my God.
Is that part of the experiential? We can definitely expense this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a primary source.
Primary. Oh,
right?
Primary.
It was put. This is a book, and we'll get more into it later, but the book that we're about to read from is put together by the Source family. Specifically,
one of the members, right? One of the
members who was like the documentarian of the group.
And this this historian, cult historian, whatever, her name was Isis Aquarian, right?
And we'll get into those names and their meaning a little bit later.
Yeah, that wasn't her birth name. That was her cult given name.
So let me crack into this.
Oh, are you going to do some ASMR sounds with the book?
Probably not, because it's really heavy.
Here, I'll do it.
Sounds terrible.
Oh, God, that's horrible.
Let me do it.
Okay, that's proof that we actually are holding on to a book.
We are.
Actually, that was the turning of the page was
The Birth Litany. 1. I desire birth. 2, I am
Good
ready.
job. You already did that.
2, I am ready to be burned and consumed, for that is what birth is. 3, I am ready to be naked and unprotected and to suffer from my nakedness, for that is what life is. 4, I am ready to make the pilgrimage through matter in darkness and in fire, so that the circle of the uncreate shall become one with the circle of the create.
Okay, you lost me on that one. I had you at the naked part.
I mean, I had everybody at the naked part.
Yeah, but then after that, I just... I couldn't keep up.
Well, I'll explain it to you as best I can. This litany was written by Mabel Collins, who we identified as the spiritual grandmother of the group.
Okay.
This litany is was part of an annual event in the family called the Rebirth Initiation, which took place in December's, which also included teachings from something called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, a quintessential occultist text that we don't have time to get into today.
Oh, no. Okay, who's Thoth again, though?
Oh, my God. Get out of here. It is referring to Thoth, the Egyptian god, but I think that...
The Egyptian god of lisping.
Yeah. I think that the idea is that he was actually an Atlantean, and then also, like, in some circles, it's known as the Emerald Tablets of Hermes, and it's like maybe Hermes and Thoth were like maybe the same guy. I don't know.
All right,
alchemy.
Guys. Get your dogma straight, please.
It's too much for us to go into, but this ceremony, this ritual that the group has is based on teachings in that text as well as this birth litany from Mabel Collins. And
that text was allegedly written onto emerald tablets by this Thoth god?
Yes.
Tens of thousands of years ago? Okay.
Along with insight into this specific holiday or ritual in the Source family, the book also provides a guide to their daily practices. There are 40 of them, so I won't...
that is way too many.
I won't read you all of them, but I will pick out a representative few to read to you.
Okay. Unless it's like nap 40 times, I don't think I can do it.
Okay, so the first thing...
Yeah.
This is called Yehovah's Daily Menu.
Okay.
And the quote at the top is, "The reason Thoth became great is because he used the keys." And that quote is attributed to Father.
I'm sorry, what does that have to do with a menu? I thought Yehovah was God, so
Yeah.
why is it Thoth? Is Thoth the one true God? Or
No,
is he
I think
god?
it's just Thoth. I don't even think he's just an Atlantean who got revered as a god eventually.
That's so confusing.
But he became great because he used the keys. Presumably the keys are these like steps in Yehovah's daily menu. Then this is what
menu
the
of
teachings
things to
of
do.
God. Yes.
Not like menu of the Source family where you can get like a salad or a wrap.
Number 1. As you awaken, exhale Yehovah for your first breath.
I will not do that.
Nope, that's what you have to do. After exhaling, say either aloud or to yourself, "Be still and know I am God." Then it wants you to go for a swim, either in the ocean or a swimming pool. Follow the physical exercise program every morning.
That's a very privileged thing to recommend people to do.
To go swim in the ocean or a pool,
Yeah.
It wants you to do the star exercise to tune yourself into the universal life energy currents of the morning. And I will say, remember that one because it comes back.
Okay, I'm going to call that the "just call me angel of the morning" rule.
Practice the pineal wave to eliminate any trace of negativity within.
Okay, so again, in the smorgasbord of things that weirdos believe, pineal gland is on that menu too.
Instruct the fire of the sacred herb, pumping your stomach 7 times and exhaling Yehovah. Roll your neck.
And that'll give you like a better high?
Visualize your vehicle for your next lifetime. See it in perfect equilibrium.
Ferrari.
I like this one. Never react to any situation. Always act or speak consciously after reflecting for 3 seconds, saying Yehovah. I like the idea of
I do like
take
that.
3 seconds to figure out how you want to act in response to something, and then do it rather than compulsively reacting in a compulsive way, impulsive way. I don't know.
No, I do too. It's like giving your executive function a chance to respond versus just reacting emotionally. Yeah.
Or
a broken clock is right twice a day,
Here's number 2, because I like this one. If there is a thought you do not want to have, exhale forcefully and say, "Go get out." And that's all in exclamation points. And that is actually resembles a therapy technique called thought stopping, in which if you're having like intrusive thoughts or negative thoughts or thoughts that are not, I don't want to say not serving you, but like are unhealthy in some way, like the technique that's used is called thought stopping, in which you like, you know, yell fuck off to the thought in your head, or you picture a stop sign or something to like literally stop the thought. This is kind of thought stopping.
Okay. Is it the thought stopping?
Get out of here. Number 36, hang upside down.
Okay. I'm pretty sure the Michael Keaton Batman did that.
Number 37, sneeze through your nose with your mouth shut.
That does not sound safe.
That's how you get an aneurysm. Drink no coffee after noon. I like this one too.
I fail at that every day.
Respect time. Always be 15 minutes early.
Late? Can I be late?
Eat twice a day and chew until liquid, consciously directing every bite.
Absolutely not.
Never snack between meals.
Oh, I guess they were all vegetarians, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way I'm like chewing a piece of steak until it's liquid, but I guess I could do that with like some fucking beans.
Program your subconscious mind before going to sleep. The mystic road of the day. Exhale Yehovah, your last breath before falling asleep. You get kind of what we're going. There's like some actionable advice here, as well as like visualize your bing bong ling long.
Right. that's yeah. Yeah, that was my favorite rule actually.
Visualize your pineal wave to eliminate cold showers and instruct your find health.
Yeah, there's a couple good things, there's some weird things, and then there's like the like prescribe how you live your life as like a means of control things.
Yeah. So those are some specifics. This book that we're talking about also notes that the rules that they have often evolved and were like pointedly, decidedly dynamic. So the rules we just read are not even hard and fast rules.
What?
They're rules that they came up with.
What kind of rule is that?
At one point, and then it was like, oh, now we're like growing and changing. Like the Aquarian Age was... The idea was that like that's also growing and changing and evolving. So like the group wanted their beliefs and practices to do the same. The name of the group would often change to like reflect this. So the Source Family, or sometimes it was called the Religion of 10 or the Religion of Now. And they would write up other edicts and rules. And we're going to share some of this stuff on Instagram because there's a ton of content that came out from this group. So like we'll share stuff on Instagram.
It sounds like a really elaborate LARP.
Isn't that anything? Isn't that anything?
Yeah, it's like a company.
Yeah. As you can probably guess, there were other like greatest hits of New Age beliefs in here. So like natural medicine, specific teachings to prohibit the use of modern medicine unless absolutely necessary.
Like they weren't allowed to go to the hospital unless it was like a broken bone or something.
Yeah.
Right?
They practiced home births, which was actually illegal at the time.
Okay.
And they even filmed their births that took place within the family, and this included the first child to be born, who was named Solomon. And he was born with his umbilical cord around his neck, which is a birth injury that can happen. And everyone believed him to be stillborn when he first arrived. And Father Yod prayed over the baby. This is a story that is told, like very mythologized within the group, that they did actually capture on video. But, you know, this is their interpretation. Father Yod prayed over the baby, who began to breathe. So the group saw this as a miracle, like, oh, the baby was dead and now he's alive. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go out on a limb and say what is likely that to happen is that he came out injured and...
The umbilical cord loosened and then he was able to uninjured. Then breathe.
So yeah, this was seen as a miracle that further cemented the group's beliefs in their father and in the idea that all of us are like destined for godhood if we just like pray hard enough. Father Yod preached that we are all Jesus, like I mentioned, and we are all destined to reach the state of God or goddess. Again, a belief that we have seen elsewhere.
Jesus is already complicated enough. Like, is he a dude? Is he a god? Is he a god dude? A dude god? And now he's also me?
Yeah, he's all of us.
No. I'm sorry. I can't handle it.
This god goddess destiny was also reflected in the belief that the family had lived previous lives, specifically on Sirius, or like by Sirius, the star.
That sounds very serious.
And they were destined to return there, I think after death. Like Yod would often talk about his destiny to go to Sirius first to prepare the family's next spiritual home there. So take that as you will. In addition to home births, the family also practiced homeschooling, which was also illegal at the time.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
I thought homeschooling...
It wasn't like technically legal till 1993.
No way.
Yeah.
I thought that was just like something people did.
I thought you could do that.
Yeah.
But it was like some bill that Bill Clinton signed into law, like a Religious Freedom Act kind of thing.
Okay. So when we do our inevitable episode on homeschooling and like it's the terrors of homeschooling, we blame Bill Clinton for that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Just keeping in the domesticity realm here, there were many couples that came into the group together. There were couples that formed wall in the group. And there were couples that were decreed by Yod himself. So that means that there were times where he would tell certain people to get together, and this would sometimes break up existing couples.
I've seen that before. Yeah. It sounds like Twin Flames Universe stuff.
A lot like Twin Flames Universe stuff. There were a lot of ideas about men and women needing one another and fulfilling specific roles together. This was very prevalent. And while they were, couched in this spirituality, they did reflect what we would call patriarchal or heteronormative beliefs, or like in the modern spiritual equivalent of belief in like the divine feminine and divine masculine roles.
Yeah, it's funny how those like
it's always come up.
It's this revolutionary belief system that is like so outsider, but then like
it's the men go to work and the women stay home.
I've heard this before though.
Yod, who I said had 4 marriages prior to forming the Source family, was married to a woman named Robin, who was 30 years younger than him. They guided the group.
30?
I think she was 19 and he was 43 when they got married. Because that's not 30.
No, that's 24.
Sorry.
Oh, that's totally normal then.
Forgive me. Robin was 20 plus years younger than him, not 30 plus. They viewed themselves as guiding the group kind of as a partnership, like a mother-father type thing. Obviously, Yod was the leader. Mm-hmm. But eventually he decided that this was not his destiny and he was to actually have 14 wives.
You don't say.
So despite Robin's protests, who he was legally married to, he symbolically married 13 other young women from the group.
When we say symbolically, we just mean there was not a legal marriage.
There was not a legal contract, but it was
for them
legitimate in the eyes of their group. Yes,
right,
it was an actual marriage for them. It just was not legal in the eyes of Uncle Sam.
Fucking Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam.
So that now we're starting to get into more like, actually not starting. Here's yet another, I've seen this in other groups before.
The women were mostly young, and there are some accusations of there may have been women that he had relationships with there may have been girls that he had relationships with or other men in the group had relationships with that were minors. Yeah, I don't think it was a frequent practice, but I do think it happened.
They did cover that in the documentary.
What documentary?
Oh, sorry. Allegedly, that is something that has been
documentary.
That has been something that was covered.
These women were generally with him kind of like picture an entourage. So they were with him a lot of the time. They liked to be seen out and about, and they helped him guide the group. So they were spiritual advisors in some way, even while Father Yod was kind of the godhead, the figurehead, the leader.
Right. So my understanding, we can get more into this in a minute, but Robin didn't care for this turn of events.
No.
And basically said that he was just like being a dirty old lewd man.
She was deeply hurt by this and eventually grew to see him as, quote, a dirty old man on a lust trip.
Yeah. And when you kind of look at his history too, like later on, it doesn't even go, like he keeps going for like younger and younger women. Like he kind of has this cycle. He was married before the Source family, and then he had discarded that wife for Robin, and then Robin was sort of kind of discarded for these other younger women who then even later on had other replacements. So he just kind of seems to have a cycle there.
Maybe as a pattern. These 13 wives would eventually establish a formal council so that the leadership of the group was balanced with a patriarchal father and a matriarchal council. Right. Father always maintained more power than anyone, I will say.
Right. Like the women were in charge except when they disagree with what the man wants. Yeah. So.
But I don't want to denigrate what the system that they think worked, that they say worked for them.
Sure.
If it worked for them, great, but I detect issues.
it worked for them, and I don't judge them for that, but I'm going to maybe not agree if they say like we were super balanced.
Totally equal.
Yeah.
No, that's not what equality is. I don't know. One of his wives, Makushla, was called his mother angel and was more of like a mother figure to him than like a lover figure, despite her much younger age.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't she like super young?
Yeah, but spiritually, they had
that's weird.
Spiritual lives in a past life. She was his maternal spiritual counsel. There's a great image in this book of the two of them recreating the image of the Pietà together, and like she was very much close to him in that way. That a different relationship than the other wives.
Like you do you, but I'm just. When like a 50-something-year-old dude has like a mothery relationship
if a 50-year-old man comes up to you and says, "You're my mom," and you're like 19, go away from him.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like it.
I don't like it either.
It's like even weirder than just like the regular, sort of weirdness of that age gap. I don't know. I
do like this part. Sex magic.
Oh,
was also a prominent feature of the group, which they called Dianism. I don't know too much about like the explicit practices, but essentially members would engage in tantric sex with each other or with Yod to cultivate spiritual energy. Like the idea of when they were having sex in this ritualistic way, it was to cultivate spiritual energy. And that is like sex magic.
Great pickup line. Yes.
Absolutely. It's also an idea that's found in many occultist belief systems. I think it is a legitimate belief. I also think it can be very easily abused.
Yeah. I came up in the Kirsch documentary. Yeah. Where one of the people they were interviewing talked about having sex.
It was slightly different in Kirsch. Sorry to jump in.
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead.
They weren't all fucking each other. They were only fucking him.
They were only fucking him, right. But the mode of fucking was similar, right? It was like the way she described it was like it was a spiritual experience. It wasn't like a sexual thing. I was basically having sex with God, and it was like this... Yeah, like the spiritual growth thing. That
closeness
was good
with
for
God.
me.
Yeah.
He was doing me a favor.
This idea also really, it fit right in with the hippie ideal of free love at the time. So
that's true.
It worked for them.
Fair enough.
As I mentioned before, the group was very into the idea of the age of Aquarius. They had Aquarian names for all the planets, including the sun, which they called Omni. They also created Aquarian names for themselves, which they legally changed. So you mentioned Isis Aquarian before. That is not her birth name. That is a name that she legally changed to.
Okay, so it wasn't just like they called each other. It wasn't a nickname.
No, it was
a
legal.
Legal name change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone in the family had a first name. I think it was bestowed upon them by Father Yod. Their middle name became and the last name became Aquarian. So blank the Aquarian.
Okay, so it's actually Isis the Aquarian.
Galaxy the Aquarian. Venus, Electricity, Abraham, Ra, Damien, Aquariana, Jinn, Octavius.
Aquariana the Aquarian?
I think it's a great name.
Get out of here.
So many more, but those are that's just a little taste.
That sounds like that one you just kind of like ran out of ideas.
Yeah. They had a strong belief in the power of the words I am and believed they could manifest various things internally and in the world. I think you have more to talk about on that later, so I'll save it for you.
I am going to talk more about that.
I will save that for you. This is all just the tip of the iceberg. Like, this group existed from 1969 to 1977, constantly expanded or changed their beliefs, drew on massive existing belief systems. So it's impossible to get into every detail and nuance. But I will end this section with my favorite belief that we will talk about a little bit later. During one's lifetime, each breath you take implants a spiritual picture of that moment of your life into your life force or bloodstream. When the body dies, your soul spends 3.5 days traveling that river of memories and viewing those moments. This viewing allows you to see how your actions influenced others and gives you the chance to learn from your life so that you can take that knowledge and grow from it in your next life. It's important to leave a body undisturbed after death for 3.5 days in their belief system so that this process can take place. And that number is drawn from other spiritual traditions. I think it might be present in Sikhism. I think it might be present elsewhere. Remember this for later.
That is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I love it. Leave me alone for 3.5 days. I'm tired. I need to take my journey.
My dead body is tired.
Sleepy.
I need to have my dead body shitting or whatever it is that your dead body does. You shit when you die, right?
I think so.
I don't know.
I hope so. I don't want to get buried with poop. Hope it all comes out. One of Father Yod's wives said that the members of the Source family don't have a fear of death. Father Yode's teachings gave them that gift. And Isis Aquarian said that he made spirit fun. So kind of like this idea of really leaning into the hippie lifestyle and having a band and having a restaurant and not being afraid to court, Hollywood coolness and be hip. But it was still very spiritual. Like, he made the spiritual very fun. It wasn't like stoic and like, oh, keep your head down. It was fun. You're having sex. You're smoking a little bit of weed. You're eating good food. You're swimming in the ocean. You're meeting celebrities. You're hanging out all together.
Banging each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the hedonistic spiritualism, not the like ascetic spiritualism.
Without being like, we're drinking and doing drugs and partying and going out all night. Like, it interestingly had a little, like, it had restraint, but was still
so there were squares in a couple of ways,
yeah.
But most of the ways they were far out, man.
So how did this all end? Or did it end, I guess?
I don't know. Is it around today?
The group existed in a formal way until 1977.
Oh, you said that.
Did not exist formally after that. So let's talk about the events that led up to its disbanding. After a few years in Hollywood, growing in notoriety, the group began to feel unsafe in their home. So they got a lot of attention. Attention sometimes starts to turn, especially when you get like bigger and weirder, which they were getting bigger and weirder. Father Yode also held some like apocalyptic beliefs, believe it or not. Things
Shocking.
like, oh, the world is on the brink of a nuclear war, which it was.
Yeah, that part's
similar
true.
Disasters, which it was. And they also felt this edge of disaster specifically in the way that their family was treated in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So authorities were being called on them more and more often because the group was continuing their illegal practices of home birth and homeschooling. There were already existing fears over spiritual families after the 1969 Tate LaBianca murders carried out in Hollywood by the Manson family.
Right.
And those fears continued to grow. And at a certain point, Yode decided the group needed to move and establish a self-sustaining compound that could support the, all 140 of them, as well as any new members that came to them. So during this search for a new home, Yode floated the idea of disbanding the family several times. He was kind of like, maybe we've reached our end. Maybe I've taught you everything I have to teach you. But each time, according to the group, the family members pushed back on this idea. They were like, no, we want you as our spiritual leader. We all want to be together. We want to continue following you, even if it's not easy. And so each time Yode would reluctantly agree. And
that's kind of a bummer. I don't know, like relationships, especially like teaching relationships.
Yeah.
Kind of feel like they have like a natural endpoint.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit pathological to desire it to be of infinite length.
Yeah. That is asking a lot.
Yeah.
To teach me forever.
Yeah.
However, he did also at this time change his name from Father Yode to Yehovah. He began to call him Yehovah.
So he thought he was God.
I don't know who started calling him Yehovah, if he went and said like, I'm Yehovah, or if they just started calling him Yehovah, or how that happened. But simultaneously, he was going like, no, pushing the way. And also, yeah, but I am God. So I don't know.
Please don't call me
Mixed
that. But
messages.
like I totally am.
Eventually, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here. There's a lot, obviously, that happened with this group, but these are the big strokes. They eventually settled in Hawaii, but they thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to finally have our compound. We're going to finally, be able to live out all these dreams that we want to live peacefully. But it was actually rougher for them in Hawaii than in Hollywood.
Ugh.
So there had already been spiritual groups like this that had settled in Hawaii that did not mesh with the local culture very well. So locals were extremely distrustful of New Age hippies after bad experiences with communes and compounds on their islands. And also just like, there's a lengthy history of groups coming to Hawaii and displacing people and utilizing the land in ways that the people who are from there are like, hey, maybe don't do that. Lengthy history there, continues to this day. I don't begrudge any locals for being distrustful or hostile towards a group of 140 hippies rolling in being like, we're here.
Right. Yeah.
The family felt like they were being greeted with hostility. The men had trouble finding jobs, so money became tighter. Eventually the men would, I don't know if they ever did, but Father Yode was like floating the idea of like, maybe you should cut your hair if you're like going out there to find jobs. He did ask, like the men stopped wearing robes in public so that they would not be associated with the group outside of their home, so that they could get jobs and be in the family. Yode voiced concerns that he had failed his family. And again, like, I should step down. Again, this was met with like, no way, you did not. There's no failure here. Like, you're our father, you're our teacher. Met with resistance. And then one morning, Father Yode announced that he wanted to go hang gliding, even though he had never gone hang gliding before.
I've never gone hang gliding before. I want to go hang gliding.
This would be his first time. And he specifically wanted to hang glide off the nearby cliffs over the ocean.
Okay.
So generally, I think I don't know what the learning rules were at the time, but nowadays I know that if you go to learn to hang glide, you don't start by jumping off cliffs. You're like,
right.
You're basically running along the ground, getting a little bit of air. That's
right.
like your first time hang gliding. Yeah. This was, I'm going to jump off these cliffs with a hang glider. And it was like too small for him. He was not a small man.
Kayla, I've played
too small
wings.
for him.
Okay, I can jump off a cliff.
Many of his, when he said this and he was like, hey, let's go hang gliding. I'm going to go hang gliding right now. Like, immediately his followers and his wives like started screaming and crying like, no, like, this is very dangerous. We don't want you to do this.
Okay.
Like, this is going to be unsafe. But they
were correct. Yeah.
He refused to be swayed. He was like, I get the sense that was kind of the dynamic. Like, once he got an idea in his head, especially about something he was going to do, it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. So a small group of his followers accompanied him to the cliffs with a hang glider. He gets into the hang glider. He says that he is going to tap into the memories from Lemurian lifetimes, because apparently...
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Lemurian lifetimes. Back then, men had wings to fly off of things. So he's like, I'll just tap into that. You don't need to teach me. I'm good. I'll just remember.
Yeah, he has the wing memories.
And they watched as he jumped into the air, even though it was a windy day. At this exact moment, the wind abruptly stopped, and he plummeted 900 feet in front of them. Just before crashing into the ocean, enough of a breeze kicked up to carry him onto the beach where he crash landed.
Oh, he crashed. Oh, I thought he crashed into the water.
He did not. He crashed on land.
Ugh, that's not as good. Although at that height, crashing on water is pretty bad too.
Just don't crash. Don't crash land. The group rushed to him. They found him unable to move, tangled in his hang glider. He had no obvious broken bones. There was no visible blood, but he was in great pain. He said he felt like he'd broken his back. The group, I think they carried him home. I think they put him in like a Mercedes. Someone had a Mercedes. Put him in the car, carried him home.
Emergency vehicle, Mercedes.
Trying to decide what to do. At one point, Yode wondered, he asked for the paramedics to come and bring him oxygen. So he had oxygen, and he contemplated, like, should I go to the hospital? Mm. And he asked his counsel, and I believe it was Michaela counseled him as, it's up to you if this is what you want to do. It would be going against your own spiritual teachings, but whatever you want to do.
Oh, man.
And he decided...
Hoisted by your own petard.
He decided to not go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Father Yode attributed the pain in his back to his kundalini energy rising through his chakras. Mm-hmm. He laid his head in Michaela's lap, his mother angel's lap, and just a few hours after his accident, he died. The family describes this process as Yode consciously leaving his body and entering the next life. And many of them hold the belief that Yode had finished dispersing his teachings to his followers and needed to leave his body in this moment so that they would disperse into the world and lead their own lives.
You know, he tried to get them to do that, though.
Yeah.
Like, before the death thing, I kind of feel like, I don't know.
It seemed like this was, I mean, buying into mythology of the group, it seems like maybe this was the only way
to actually
for his spiritual children to leave the nest. They had to no longer have physical access to their father.
That's sad. Like, that's a sad part of that dynamic.
He just had a weird, like, I'm going to go hang gliding and had an accident. I don't know if this was a completed suicide. I don't know if that was his intent.
Or if it was like, or if not quite suicide, but maybe a little death wish.
Yeah, I don't know. Or, or if it was what the group believes, that he was like, I'm going to peace out of this life so that you'll all like take my teachings and live your own lives. I don't know. But he jumped off a cliff and died.
Yeah, that'll do that.
In accordance with their teachings, the family left his body undisturbed for 3.5 days for him to complete his spiritual or soul travel down his river of memories, and then they called the authorities. It was a very uncertain time for this group to find themselves suddenly fatherless. Like, they didn't really have a plan for this. They were mourning their leader. There was no clear way forward. They were on a hostile island thousands of miles from any other home they had known. The Council of Women agreed that Macushla would become the next spiritual leader of the group, and they tried to keep things going, but things were just never quite the same. It became clear that Yod was the spiritual glue holding everything together.
Yeah.
And a little over a year, between a year and 2 years later, Macushla formally disbanded the group, and everyone went their own separate ways.
Hmm.
And that is the story of how the Source family officially ended. But according to Venus the Aquarian, Father Yod still reaches out to teach us today and continues to pull strings from beyond the grave, orchestrating events as he sees fit. According to her, you can connect to Yehovah anytime you want. You follow his exercises, follow his teachings, do the meditations, and you reach out to him. Like any other god, he'll be there.
There's another way they're still around too, kinda.
How is that?
Remember that documentary we mentioned?
Oh! Hold on, let me put this book away.
So yeah, the book, actually, the documentary is partially based on the book that you just put away. But we will get to that. We will get to the documentary. I have some words to say about it.
Say some words.
The question, though, is where did we go to watch this documentary? And the answer is, in the first part of this episode, we've already answered it, so I don't know why I'm being cagey. We drove to a, let's call it a compound. Let's call it it was called the Philosophical Research Society, PRS. And it did have a very like compoundy feeling to it. There was like a courtyard, there was a bookstore and a library. So they had, like you said, it's a lending library. So just based on my own casual browsing, it seemed like both the bookstore and the library had like a full spectrum of books. And when I say spectrum, I mean like from one side where it's like total like, bullshit weirdo stuff to stuff that's sort of in between, where it's like maybe this is metaphor, maybe this is just like talking about like intuitive ways of living and doing things, all the way to like, legit like academic research, right? Like where there's scholarship and you're actually studying religion or theology or spiritualism from like a neutral third party point of view. So it had like this full spectrum of books.
I will correct you on one thing.
Yes.
It is not a lending library. It is a research library. You can only...
Excuse me.
You can't go and check books out and like read them at home and bring them back. It's specifically you go there. The book, because I think they have something like 50,000 rare and like rare books on the occult and esoterica and whatnot. And so in order to utilize this research library, one must go here and utilize the facilities.
It's like the old-timey, like pre-printing press medieval libraries with chains attached to the books. Yeah, except there weren't chains attached to the books.
Not that we saw. Cool. I think there probably were in other parts of the compound that we did not visit while we were there. Reasons to go back. Yeah,
well, and I'll talk about other places that we did visit. A lot of the books there, and I mean a lot, were by this guy named Manly P. Hall.
Oh, I've heard that name before.
I feel like we've heard that name earlier in the episode. The reason, or one of the reasons, I mean, I guess you would probably have this guy on your bookshelves if you were just a regular old run-of-the-mill esoteric, bookshop. But this particular bookshop / research library, part of the reason they have so much stuff with Manly P. Hall is because it is the organization that he founded.
It's his.
It is his. So there's a direct link between the Source family and the Philosophical Research Society via this relationship that Manly P. Hall and Jim Bakker had.
So to clarify, we attended an event at the Philosophical Research Society, which is founded by esoteric philosopher Manly P. Hall, who was a teacher of Jim Bakker, who'd become Father Yod.
Yes.
Is that complicated enough for you?
And to further clarify, the Philosophical Research Society doesn't only do stuff about the Source family. They have all kinds of different events and
exhibitions and groups and things, any kind of weird shit that's involved in spirituality. They've got classes. You should go on their website.
But on this particular day, they were screening the Source family documentary that we talked about. It's called
The Source Family.
The Source Family. So if you want to go look up this it's actually a pretty good documentary. which I'll talk about in a second. But first, I want to talk about the experience. So I told you that it feels a little bit like a cult compound. There is the bookstore and the library. There were other buildings that we didn't get to go into. There was a little reception area where they had delicious samosas and weird drinks.
The perfect combination.
Yeah.
If I'm going anywhere, give me a delicious samosa and a weird drink, and I'm happy as a clam.
And like why do all these cult places have like the most delicious vegetarian food?
I don't know.
Like, what is it about? Like, because remember when we went to, what was it called?
Loving Hut.
Loving Hut. Loving Hut was super tasty.
And to further clarify, this was not food from the Source family restaurant.
No.
Unfortunately, it was from another Indian food restaurant nearby. Delicious, but I don't know. These weirdos know where the best food is.
Yeah, but the Source restaurant itself was supposedly very delicious.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like that. Maybe that's how they really get people is the delicious food.
It's the food.
Yeah.
Do you talk about the kind of people that attended?
I was just gonna say they're weirdos. You want me to keep that, or
yeah?
So then you kind of walk back from the reception area, and it's just like, I don't know. There's like a weird looking hall. We'll send a few pictures about this piece of because we took pictures of the place. I don't know. It just had a weird vibe. But then, of course, there was a large auditorium with strange art on the wall, like very culty looking art with again, people in robes, like in pastoral settings. Anyway, the auditorium is where we watched the Source family documentary with, what would you say? It was like 200
packed.
people, maybe?
It was a crowded, packed house.
Yeah, it was packed.
Everybody looked exactly like you would expect a person who was watching a documentary about cults at a cult compound in Los Angeles on a Thursday evening.
It was just like a bunch of interchangeable, white ladies in flowing dresses.
All of these people got their clothes. It was like they all stepped out of 1977, impeccable dressers. Everyone looked like a witch. I'm very jealous. Lots of robes, lots of flowing, lots of head wraps, lots of long hair, hipster hippies, my people.
Yeah. And there were some other people there, interestingly enough.
There were.
Which I will introduce that based on another story of our experience there. You were trying to, I think, redo my ponytail when we were just sitting out in this courtyard. You just were redoing my ponytail real quick.
Intimidated by the amount of beautiful hair that was going on. I was like, oh shit, we got to make ourselves presentable.
Right. And some lady walked up and just started talking to us about how nice it is to be grooming each other's hair or something. And we were just we made conversation, but it was just okay, that's weird. And then she mentions yeah, I'm so is this you guys' first time here? Yeah. Oh yeah, this is so cool. I think a few of Father Yode's wives are here, which turned out to be the case. So we watched, and not only the wives were there, but a few other members of the group were there as well.
In the audience.
That weren't his wives.
Yeah.
Venus Aquarian was there. She was doing tarot readings in the library/bookstore. I'm not sure which part of the compound that was, but she was doing tarot readings. I tried to get in, but it was the sign up list was long. And
you were the last one.
And I was the last one. Yeah, I know. That was
if there had been 10 more minutes, she would have finished up her one reading and then it would have been you.
I know. I was so disappointed. But we had to get into the auditorium to watch
the documentary.
Yeah. So anyway, she was there. Isis Aquarian was there.
And if you'll remember, Isis Aquarian is the one who was the designated documentarian of the Source family. So
she produced the book.
Yeah. Every image in this book. So this book is basically a scrapbook of pictures of every facet of their lives throughout the years of the Source family. So all of those came from her. And then in the documentary, I don't know if you say this, I might be jumping you. A lot of the footage, the original footage was also captured
taken
by her.
From her. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Galaxy Aquarius. Did I say Galaxy or did I say Venus?
You said Venus.
I said Venus.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was Venus, Isis, and Galaxy.
All of which were
a few others.
One of his 13 wives.
Yeah, but the three, yeah, exactly. So there were a few others, but the three of them were his not legal wives, but wives.
You could absolutely tell who was there from the cult. You could just tell. There was probably, I want to say maximum 10 people that were from the cult, and it was or from the group, I will say, from the Source family, where you were yeah, you were a Source family person.
From the weird.
You were a Source family person. You were a Source family person. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it's funny because we just said, everybody looked the same there. They looked the same, but more so.
They looked the most.
They looked the most that.
You could tell that they had been part of a new age spiritual family in the 1970s.
Yes.
Amazing.
So there we were with all these folks, all these weirdos in this giant auditorium about to watch this documentary. But first, the Master of Ceremonies informed us that we were going to participate in a little pre-documentary ritual.
Ooh.
So this is actually something we mentioned earlier in the show. Kayla, you mentioned it. It's called the star exercise. So basically what this was we stood up, everybody stood up from their seats, reached your arms out side to side, which actually made it quite difficult because the chairs were right next to each other. So you kind of had to stagger. It was really weird. And then we basically just did like this
wait. One palm
rapid
up,
breathing thing.
one palm up, one palm down.
Right. One palm up, one palm down.
You stood kind of like with your legs apart, almost as if you made a 5-pointed star.
Right. And there was like some stuff you're supposed to say like in your head or whatever, but I don't remember exactly what it was. But the main part of the ritual was this like rapid inhaling.
in out breathing.
It was like
nose. It was nose, baby.
Oh, it was nose. Yeah, I was like I can't.
It was the way I did it. It was literally
yeah, it's kind of what you're it was what you're doing. To be honest, it was like pretty fucking tiring.
Excuse me, it made me cough. We did that 108 times in a row.
Yeah,
that was
so
the ritual. Is like you get in this position, you say whatever ritually thingies you say, and then you started breathing slowly, and then escalated to the. And then it was 108
and you're supposed to do
of those.
you're supposed to do 108 times in a row, which was like I think I made it to like 50 before I had to take some normal breaths. It was.
I'm not affected by pretending to do it.
And it was all led by one of the cult members. Do you remember his name?
I don't remember his name, but he
was like an OG.
He introduced this ritual basically by saying like, this is one of the most powerful tools that Father gave me. Like I got the impression that he still did this every day. If you remember when I was reading from the like 40-point Jehovah's menu, doing the star exercise was on their daily menu. So I think this was something that, and in the book, there's pictures of them doing this exercise. This was a very prominent ritual in their day-to-day lives. And it seemed like he said, this is something that changed my life. It was the most powerful thing ever, blah, blah, blah. Like,
that is crazy.
It was a big deal.
Because I feel like all it did...
And he also said it was an ancient ritual.
Oh, yeah, he did.
They were talking about how this wasn't something that they created. This was an ancient ritual, like something from, Lemurians or Atlanteans or something that's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years as a spiritual practice.
For me, like, I don't know. It just felt like it was just going to give me a panic attack. Like, I don't know. Like, it's very different from other breathing exercises.
To be fair, we also had our COVID masks on, which did not make you and I did not make it
We were
easier.
in a giant room full of weirdos.
Yeah, nobody else had a mask on.
We
That's the kind of weirdos we were
only
with.
vaccinated people in that whole room. Anyway, it was tiring. It was very different from other breath exercises I've done where like it's slow, deliberate, like you count on the inhale, you count at the top, and you count on the exhale. No. This was it was just, I don't know. It was very high energy.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And then we watched the movie. The movie was good. I was actually expecting, I didn't know what to expect, except I thought that it was going to be more of like a sycophantic type thing.
It's not made by the cult. It's not made by the group.
The weird.
It's not made by the Source family, but it does heavily, obviously interviews them and pulls from their archives. So they had a heavy involvement in its creation. So yeah, I was expecting I was expecting more of a what the bleep kind of situation.
Yeah, same. And I mean, also I'm talking about the fact that this was being showed at the Philosophical Research Society, which has a lot of credulity. When they
introduced the documentary, the Master of Ceremonies said like, oh, this is kind of, or maybe they said it after, I don't know. But it was said that the Philosophical Research Society is essentially the spiritual home of the Source family. Like that's how interlinked these things are.
Right. And the Source family had members there.
Right.
And. So there was like a lot of reasons for us to sort of think like, okay, this is going to be like a very biased presentation of this group. And it wasn't. It was very like actively neutral, right? It presented two sides. It felt very like Netflix documentary,
right,
where it did the thing where it interviewed different people and presented both sides and was edited well.
Members of the group as well as like reporters from the time and academics, so like getting different sides of things. And it also had members that had differing takeaways from the group.
So they interviewed, like, for example, like Isis was in the documentary as well. But then they also talked to Robin Popper. So Robin was his first wife in the group.
Robin was his wife that he started the Source family with.
Right. So she was in the documentary, as well as the daughter that I think they had together, right? Tao?
Yeah, that was their daughter.
Yeah, so it was a daughter they had together was also in the documentary. And, you know, when they were talking about some of the earlier times together, it was, you know, she was very pro. She was like, this was what he was like, and it was wonderful. And when they were talking about the later part of the relationship and how she views him now, it wasn't very pro, right? It was very critical.
Right.
And the daughter was as well. Like, the daughter has seen sort of like how her mother has, like, some of the fallout of this relationship she had. And the daughter talked a bit about like how she hopes, like, you know, maybe even doing this documentary is like healing for her and blah, blah, blah.
Right. You need to talk a little bit louder.
Okay. So I thought it was really interesting. And I felt like they presented sort of like this empirical. I mean, obviously every documentary has some editorial point of view, but for the most part, it felt like an empirical, like neutral thing.
This like measured approach included discussing the less seemly aspects of the group, like we mentioned, such as, you know, was Father Yode's approach to having 13 wives spiritually pure, or was this his way to have access to other women, younger women? It did not shy away from his involvement with girls who were underage and the group's involvement with girls who were underage. Those things were talked about and discussed and reckoned with, which I was not expecting.
Me either. I appreciated that. Yeah, I was definitely much more expecting like a what the bleep, like it was a supportive.
Yeah, it was a weird experience.
Propaganda piece.
There were a couple times early on when it was like, it would talk about like, well, and you know, and then they got involved with these like 13-year-old girls, or got involved with the like 16-year-old girl. Turned out she was only 16, and there were like laughs from the audience, like, oh, dirty old man kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it felt uncomfortable at the time because I was like, that doesn't seem like something to laugh at.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we're laughing here. This is not my take on this at all. And then later on, the documentary went back and was like, that was fucked up. And I kind of was like, yeah, everybody in here.
You shouldn't have laughed.
You should have laughed.
Although, to be fair, I feel like half the time I'm watching a movie like with an audience,
there's weird laughter.
Like half the time, like the laughter I don't get. I'm like, why are you laughing at this? You shouldn't be laughing at this part of Schindler's List. What are you doing?
Maybe it's just uncomfortable. I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like that's frequently like, maybe it's like nervous laughter, I guess.
It's an uncomfortable thing to talk about how a spiritual leader was abusing children.
Right. That's true. So the documentary was good. I mean, as far as the contents of it, it's basically what you went over, except I think you went into a little more detail about a few things. That being said, obviously the documentary is still great to watch because, you know, you get a lot of the visuals, and it probably covered some stuff that you didn't cover. So totally recommend it. After the documentary, there was a Q&A with the 3 wives that I mentioned. So it was actually with the director of the documentary, her AD, and then Isis, Venus, and Galaxy Aquarian. So they all participated in this Q&A.
And that's what we were all there.
I mean, yeah, that was the main event, basically. So yeah, as you mentioned, like, you could definitely tell that these were the cult people. Like, they were definitely pretty weird.
I mean, they were wearing, 2 of them were wearing robes.
Yeah.
Like, still wearing the robes, which I'm not judging. I'm just saying, you know, one was in jeans, and I went, okay, that gives me a signifier as to your stance on this group now. And 2 of them were wearing robes, and I go, okay, that gives me a signifier on your stance to this now. Right.
So there were a bunch of different questions. A few of the questions involved like their relationship with Father Yode. So Isis, for example, said that she felt like he was talking directly to her whenever he was speaking, whenever he was teaching, or interacting with her directly, right? Like, he was focused in on her, and he felt like a powerful alpha male. He had like powerful alpha male energy.
Do you remember how she joined the cult?
No.
she was like working as a photographer, and she got an assignment to like, they needed to find Jesus looking dudes. And so she was like, oh, I've heard about this restaurant where there's like long haired hippie guys. I'll go there. And so she was like just going there to like take pictures.
Yeah.
And then she saw him, and she was just like, then she joined the cult.
Yeah. And it feels like there were a few different stories in the doc.
Where that like, way. I saw him and I was like, oh,
men and women.
Yeah.
Right. Where they were like, oh, I went to this place and I was curious. And then I saw this guy and I just
immediately
like, so his charisma is just apparently is just through the fucking roof. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what she said, is that, you know, he had that energy. How she found everything that she was looking for with him. That was another sentiment that kept coming up. But, you know, that energy also has I don't know if we want to call it dark side, but so Isis, and in fact, everyone's names were given to them by Father Yod. So he was the one that actually gave them names.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to stop you here because I may have misspoken earlier. I said that Manly P. Hall gave like lists of names to Father Yod of like folks to recruit. It wasn't that. He gave him lists of names to change people's names to. He helped come up with the spiritual names to give people. So Isis, Venus, Aquariana, Jinn, Manly P. Hall. I believe Manly P. Hall may have helped brainstorm those names.
You really needed help. Actually, now that I think about it, like the hardest part of starting any like customizable character like RPG is picking a goddamn name.
And this
for
is 150 of them. So
yeah, I could see where you'd need help with that. Okay. Anyway, so you didn't get a choice as to what your own name was. He would give it to you. And Isis specified that she did not like the name that was given to her.
For a long time.
It's not that she didn't like it for a day. It was for a very long time she didn't like it. And then she didn't get to the point where she liked it. She got to the point where she was like, fine, I guess
this is my name.
I guess this is my name. And the way she put it was, kind of like, haha, you just can't say no to him. Which is like, it kind of, I don't know. It's a very interesting thing to say, right?
There's a lot of weight in that statement.
Yeah. The part of it is like, okay, he has a very forceful way of being. Part of it is, what he says goes, whether you like it or not. Right. There's a few different things bubbling in that word to unpack, but it was interesting that she didn't like her name that's something pretty fundamental about your person, right? Like that's very personal.
Yeah.
And for somebody to dislike it that much and like not have a choice and go with it, I don't know. It just tells you a lot.
Say that is the relationship we have to our birth names, however. And if the way that these folks are viewing this is like, I am spiritually being born into this new spiritual family, and I am given a name by my spiritual father, and that becomes part of my new identity, that's not totally dissimilar from when we're born as babies and we're given a name by our parents.
That's true.
Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. You can change it if you want. It's just the idea of like, you can't say no is really the issue there.
Yeah. My parents named me after nothing. They were like, we just thought the name sounded cool. I've asked them this question and they're like, yeah, it sounded like a cool name. And I'm just like, oh, okay. That's meaningful. But
and to think your name could have been picked from a list curated by Manly P. Hall.
I know. If they had asked Manly P. Hall, I would have gotten a cool name like Galaxy, or I guess that's a girl name. I don't know. Are there girl names and boy names in this thing? Or I
don't think a boy would have been named Aquariana, just going out on a limb.
Okay. Maybe Aquariano.
Aquariano for sure.
Okay.
There was a boy named Electricity.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about. I could have had the name Electricity.
Yeah.
Or like Comet. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Meteor. I don't know. Anyway, a few other things that were sort of mentioned during the course of the Q&A. It lasted a pretty long time. They did go to audience questions. They mentioned that they were all like sisters in the compound before they were like, all the wives felt like they were sisters before they were his wives.
That makes sense. Which
is like kind of interesting. Like if you've ever watched Big Love, right? Like the polygamists there to call each other sister wives. And they, talked about being the source family. So that, that comports with that. They talked about the compound living as being like this one sort of giant experiment. One of them offhanded comment, which you said was supported. You looked this up in the scrapbook, but was this whole thing just kind of germinated from being a cover for draft dodging? Because this was the time of the Vietnam War.
Right.
And there were several people who were who dodged the draft that were a part of this group.
One of the ways to avoid being drafted at the time was to cite religious reasons, and so that may be a reason why there were so many spiritual groups at the time. Is that it helped give young men who did not want to go to war.
I never thought about
the
that.
opportunity to not. I don't know if it worked every single time. I don't know if you had to be like a 501c10 or whatever.
501c10.
Whatever. I don't know what the religion one is. 501c4. 501c3 is a nonprofit. I don't know what a religion is.
Oh, okay.
501c5. I have no idea. Whatever it is.
501 cult 10.
But in the scrapbook put together by Isis, there are numerous members where she pointed out this person was AWOL from the military, this person was AWOL from the military, this person was AWOL from the military. So even if it wasn't a cover for quote-unquote draft dodging, it was a safe space for men who did not want to participate in our military actions at the time.
I mean, it sounds more attractive to me now. Now I kind of get it.
Yeah.
There was one part that I felt like a little, I don't know, I mentioned this to you after, I felt a little awkward about it. The moderator asked Galaxy about being underage when she joined.
Right.
Was
she underage when she married?
I don't remember. I think so.
I think she might have been.
I think she was like 16 or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The reason I felt awkward about it is because she kind of like pressed her. Like she asked her multiple times.
The moderator, the director, whoever was asking the question, framed it as like in a post-Me Too era.
No, that was a different thing.
There was definitely like in a post-Me Too era, do you look at your experience differently?
Yeah, but then there was also
as a child or as a 16-year-old, and then there were more questions following.
There were two different things though. There was the post-Me Too, what do you guys think? And that was like a more broad question for like the three of them.
And then she pointed it
And then there was also separately a question directed at Galaxy about, how do you feel about this, yada yada, having been like only 16 at the time.
Right.
So that's what I mean by like there was like a couple questions. Like one of them was, broader, and it was like about this sort of like post-Me Too thing, and they all answered that, and that's when they started talking a little bit about the like, so there was an answer about like, well, it was a matriarchy, right? Like
we had a council.
We had a council, and it was like very equal, and whether it was or not is to be debated, but that was their answer to that.
Right.
And then there was this question to Galaxy about her, very specifically her underage thing. I just felt awkward about it because like, it's not a one-on-one interview. It's not like a Barbara Walters thing. There's I don't know. She's in front of everybody. She's the victim here, not the perpetrator. Like I wouldn't mind if anybody grilling Father Yod about that topic. Right. But
it was also kind
fine.
of like the multiple attempts to get an answer. Like I think if I remember correctly, it was like this pointed question. Galaxy gave not a brush off answer, but a like maybe a less vulnerable response than the moderator wanted, and the moderator asked again, and it's maybe don't re-victimize somebody that you think is a victim.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. But she did have like an interesting response. It was either one of the times that was at. So she talked about like her childhood, like she was like a bit of a wild child, right?
She self-described as that.
Self-described, like getting into trouble and stuff. And then, she went to go find herself in California. She found this source family thing and she loved it and got involved with it, right? And then her mother visited, and she recalls her mother's reaction being like, well, look, like, I know that you're young, but like you're here eating healthy, you're meditating every day, you have a stable job. You're not out all night getting into trouble, which is like something you used to do. You seem happy.
You're not on drugs. You're not drinking.
On drugs. Yeah. So it's like, this is abnormal, but also it maybe seems good in a way. So like,
she said, I remember
you do you.
She said, Galaxy quoted her mom as saying, "You're better off here."
Yeah.
Than,
which is
what
like
you're doing back home.
Man, I don't know. It's just so weird because it's like, on one
in some ways she probably was. In some ways she probably wasn't.
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows?
Like you're too young to make these kinds of decisions. But on the other hand, like all of those things that she said are pretty good points.
Yeah. It's probably, there are lots of ways parents, quote unquote, handle out of control teens. And some of those ways can be very abusive. So
yeah.
Who's to say what is the right thing to do here? I don't know.
Yeah. I really, in this case, I think I don't know if I would have done that, but I appreciate the mothering that was done.
Right.
There, like counseling the daughter to like not be in this group, especially at her age, I think also would have been okay.
Right.
But the points that she raised and the support that she showed for her daughter, I think is also a good way to handle it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it comes back to? Everything else always comes back to this.
What is it, Chris?
You cannot save people. You can only love them.
End of episode. Bye.
Sign off. Holy shit. No, there's more.
Oh.
There's more. Because they did have a few good takeaways. So like the final question was like, hey, are there anything that you want to like, say that we didn't ask? Just like a sign off sort of statement. And so the three of them had really interesting things to say. So Venus talked about the thing that you said, like the river of memories that sort of courses through your blood. And you experience that as sort of like a 3-day movie film when you die.
Right.
Isis didn't really have like a pithy quote, but she said that like the stories are so wild that you'd like scarcely believe them, which
right.
I believe that I'd scarcely believe the stories that some
their spiritual leader jumped off a cliff and like flew away and then died. Like the stories were wild.
Yeah. And then Galaxy, I liked what Galaxy said. So she said that one of the things that stuck with her is this idea that saying the words I am is a really powerful thing. So you should always be careful about the word that comes after I am, because then that's something that you are essentially programming yourself to become.
Right.
So it's not that you can't say it. It's just that when you it carries a lot of weight and you shouldn't say it lightly. You should be very deliberate with whatever word you put after the words I am. And I actually really thought that was kind of like a neat takeaway.
The book has documents that get into this, like describes the I am practice, and it even talks about how Father Yod had his followers at certain points wear rubber bands around their wrists that they would snap every time they said I am, to kind of help bring awareness to like the frequency with which they were saying I am statements, and then to like really think about the content of those I am statements, because whether or not you believe saying like I am blank manifests it spiritually, or whether you believe saying I am blank teaches your subconscious something about yourself, like
right.
Those are, it's worth looking at. It's worth thinking about the ways we're talking to ourselves about ourselves.
That's right. That's right. Instead of the rubber bands, they should have done the thing where you like get like a wet towel and you like twirl it up and then you snap somebody with the towel, with the wet towel, and you give them like a little welt.
That sounds awful.
You've never done that? I guess you haven't.
I wouldn't want to do that in this circumstance.
I guess that's kind of like a guy's locker room kind of thing.
Guys are weird.
So that concluded the Q&A, and then after the Q&A, if you are somebody who purchased this book we've been talking about all episode, then Isis was there to sign it. So we trundle up with our book to Isis and hand it to her, and then she looks at me and says, I think I know you. I think I've been... No, she said I've been looking at you all night.
She said, I've been looking at you all night trying to figure out who you are.
That's what it is. Right.
I will never forget it, because this woman did not look at... You and I were sitting next to each other. She did not look at me. She did not address me. I would talk to her. She'd look back. She did not like me.
Kayla.
Something about you wasn't me.
The cult wife was into me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was jealous.
And then I said, I'm not anybody. And what I meant was like, I'm not related to the cult. Like, I'm not part of this.
I'm not a child of galaxies or
a friend of
Taos
so-and-so's.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she was like, no, you are someone. Like, she took that as like sort of like an existential, I'm nobody. And then I think she said that she had known me in a past life.
She was like, even if I didn't know you in this life,
That's right.
We probably knew each other in a past life. It's probably something like that.
Right. And then we just sort of like smiled and nodded and moved
You said,
on.
no, I need to clarify. You said, I'm nobody. I'm just Chris.
Just Chris.
And I said, yeah, this is Chris. We both said your name. And
That's
the
right.
reason why I am bringing this up
We do need to clarify
because
that we said our name multiple times.
after you had this exchange of like, I knew you in a past life, she bowed her head to write the message in the book, sign the book to Chris. Gotta love a good cult. Love Isis. And then we were like,
weird that she wrote that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then you and I hightailed it out of there.
Right. And then we get home and we look at the signature. And I forget what she said. Like,
no.
Actually, let's read it.
I'm gonna read it.
Yeah, let's just read it out.
Opening the book again. To Fred. In kindness, love Isis Aquarian.
Oh, in kindness.
To Fred.
Yeah, to Fred.
You and I both said Chris.
So we will never know.
Maybe Fred was who you were in a past life.
That's right. So we will never know whether she was merely confused. Because let's be real. The 70s was a long time ago. These are rather old people by now. And sometimes old people, they don't hear quite right.
It was also really loud in there.
It was loud. So it could have been a mistake. It also could have been her saying like, no, you're Fred.
I think you were Fred.
You're Fred in a past life. Or maybe it was she was doing the Father Yod thing and she was just bestowing a name upon me. Yeah.
Maybe she misspelled friend.
I don't know what it is, but it's immortally captured in ink now to Fred. So that was probably the best part about the night. And then we pieced out.
And got some in and out.
And then we got in and out.
Even though we had delicious samosas, I was hungry.
Speaking of in and out, I think before we get into the criteria, I want to talk a little bit about secret sauce. Did you like that segue?
That was fantastic.
That segue was as good as an In-N-Out burger.
Yeah.
So we mentioned several times in this episode how the Source family has like a lot of different beliefs that are all the same as everybody else. And we find this a lot in this podcast where we're like, we talk about Teal Swan and it's like, oh yeah, they got the Akashic Records and something and Quantum and Lemurian and Atlantean and Aquarian. And like they all just sort of have like the same hodgepodge of beliefs. But we always do try to find like, well, what's your edge though? Like what's your differentiating factor? And for example, for Teal Swan, the position of this podcast is that it's her approach to suicidality. Right. Right. For Jay-Z Knight, it's actually, I'm not sure what it is for Jay-Z Knight. I was going to say like quantum stuff, but I think Quantum Flapdoodle is like pretty ubiquitous now.
I think with
it could be the film.
It might be the film, but I think it's specifically Ramtha. Like I think it's just the presence of Ramtha.
Like the character that she created?
Yeah.
That's pretty baller then. Because that's, all right. That's very charismatic.
Or maybe it's just Jay-Z herself. I don't know.
But that's what it is.
I'm charismatic by her.
With a single thought.
Yeah.
So what is it about the Source family? What is the differentiating factor for the Source family?
Right. Like with Aetherius, it was like the aliens. What is it with this?
I would say it's that they're nice.
Aetherius?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that they're nice.
Yes, they're nice. There's other alien
done
cults.
Abuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this earlier and I had a really good answer. I don't remember what it is anymore. what did I say?
I had two. You highlighted how at the time there was a sort of societal need for like fatherhood.
Yeah.
And particularly for these people that were joining this group. They had experiences in their childhood that were like either the father was absent or like literally absent or like metaphorically absent because, 50s father.
Think about this time in history, like their dads had probably undergone unspeakable trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. World War II. Right.
Lived through World War II or participated in unspeakable trauma, probably didn't talk about it, had untreated PTSD. That doesn't necessarily lead to a vulnerable, intimate, close relationship with your father. And it was also the 1950s where fathers were not necessarily encouraged to have close, intimate, emotional relationships with their children in the way that maybe mothers were encouraged a little bit more to do
like one of the people, it was either in the documentary or afterwards, mentioned how like their dad never basically, I don't think ever told them that they loved them.
Right.
Whereas Father Yod, that was something that he would say every day.
Right.
And like, it's literally for that person, maybe have just been that.
Right. It was like he represented not just a like spiritual teaching, like Jesus type father. It was literally like a reparenting type father.
Right.
Like here is a father that I never had.
Right. A father that is willing to say, I love you. He only has to say it once and I'm in.
Right.
Yep.
And then I think the other, I guess the real secret sauce, if we're really going to be honest, the real, like the pithy thing.
The real secret sauce is the
gimmick,
salad dressing?
It's the gimmick of the restaurant. Like it's that's what it is. It's the Source restaurant.
I think it's both. And
I think that's like if there's one takeaway from this cult, this is the restaurant cult. Like Aetherius is the UFO cult. Self-Realization Fellowship is the yoga cult. This is the restaurant cult.
Well, then what's Loving Hut?
That's another restaurant cult.
Restaurant Cult Part 2, Electric Boogaloo?
That's the restaurant cult that had franchise opportunities. This
Got
is
it.
the one that doesn't.
Got it.
And then I think the other like secret sauce was their relationship to the age of Aquarius. It feels like that was very quintessential for them in the way that there's plenty of Age of Aquarius cults, there's plenty of UFO cults, but this was like kind of their thing. I think they got a really good handle on it, and it just was like, again, I joked up front, like, this was hair personified. It's not really a joke. Like, this was capturing the sentiment of a moment.
Yeah, I think for me, though, the two most powerful things are the sort of like the fatherhood thing.
Right.
And the Source restaurant thing. And when I think about it, the answer is in their name. Source family.
Yeah.
Right? Source is the restaurant. Family is what they were looking for.
They were also
bada bing,
hot
bada boom.
and had celebrities.
Right. Hot that's true. But I mean, that's like celebrities in a cult now is like, that's, yeah.
It's always been.
On. All right. So, time for our secret sauce, the criteria.
Now, what are we criteriaing? Because we essentially went to a culturducken.
Culturducken?
Culturducken, where it was like a thing about an event with the Source family, but it was at the Philosophical Research Society, which was created by Manly P. Hall, which helped create the Source family. Like it's like an Ouroboros of cults here.
Why don't we just do Source family on the theory that maybe we'll go back to PRS at some point?
Good point.
And then we'll either do that episode on them, or there'll be some like meta analysis of PRS at the end of this, something like that.
Okay.
Also, not as much work right now.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Number 1.
Charismatic leader, bada bing, bada boom. Just through probably the highest it's ever been.
Yeah, the most.
On the show.
Yeah.
And I know we've said that before, but I think this supersedes whatever the hell we were talking about.
This is like even more than Teal Swan. This is like the most.
Yeah. This is like people meet this guy and
like you could parody this. Like if somebody was going to parody a cult leader, this is the guy that they're either parodying him or Jim Jones or David Koresh. Like this is the parody guy.
Yeah. And like just the stories of like people just being converted like as soon as they are in his presence. It was like,
God, I would give anything for an ounce of that charisma.
I know. And I mean, I would give anything to experience an ounce of that from that person.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen somebody and been like, I'ma follow you. I want that.
Yeah. I mean,
just to see if I could resist it.
You like Teal.
Yeah, but I'm not going to, I don't see her and go like, I'm leaving my life behind.
What about me? You can't resist me.
I did not. I did.
Well, you did for a while.
Yeah.
My charisma.
You couldn't resist me.
My charisma is persistence. So that's where I get mine from. Okay, expected harm. Toughie.
I don't really know how to answer that one because...
Well, you need to know how because you are the expert. I mean, I think that there is...
I think it's medium because it's clearly there. Some girls who joined this group were abused, and that's horrifying and should never happen to anyone.
Robin came to harm. Like, she was pretty explicit about that in the documentary.
Yeah. Also, I will say, we didn't talk about this in the brunt of the episode, but like... this is a very sad story. There was one member of the group who was super into hang gliding. Like he was the hang gliding guy. He was like a part of a hang gliding clubs and stuff. And he's the one who like Father Yod was like, okay, you help me do this hang gliding thing. And the guy, his name was Mercury, I believe. Mercury was like, I don't think you should do this. This hang glider is not big enough for you, but you're Father Yod, so I'll do what you say. He's the one who launched him.
Oh, man.
And that
is fucked up.
He was, according to ISIS, he was just never the same.
Yeah, of course. That's horrible.
Death. And may have completed suicide based on these events by hang gliding off of the same cliffs in the night and crashing into them.
Oh, so he died the same way.
He died the same way. And
God, Kayla.
Sorry. And then like the group tried to do the same thing where like they keep his body for 3.5 days, but like the authorities were notified. And so they like arrested they came and took the body and arrested a whole bunch of them.
Oh, God.
And like it was a big deal. So like I did kind of, because there's so much here, I didn't dwell on the pains that they went through after in Hawaii and after Father Yod passed.
Yeah.
It was not a good time during those years.
No,
it
does not sound a good time. Okay, that really ups my estimation of expected harm because you've made me very sad.
Sorry.
I feel harmed by this now. So
but then
a
lot of them were like, this was great and it's better than...
Medium high? I don't know.
I wasn't drinking. I wasn't smoking. I mean, the one guy that did the ritual was like, this changed my life. This has been the most powerful spiritual tool I've ever experienced. I'm still doing it, 40 years later.
Yeah, and they did talk about how they like still feel like they have benefit or they still like, they like the time that they spent
I think
there,
it's medium. I think it's medium.
All right, medium, but it made me sad.
Yeah.
All right, presence of ritual.
It's as high as it's ever been.
You think so? Like, I mean, it's definitely...
They're doing the star exercise every morning.
Super high. I don't know if
high.
It's so high. I don't know if I'm stack ranking though, if this is number one.
No, it's so high. There was a 40-point system, and it was like, stretch your sciatic nerve every day, jump in the ocean, now jump in the ocean again, do this meditation, do that meditation, do your star thing. Every morning you wake up, you say Yehovah, then you say something else. Every time when you go to sleep,
so let's agree that it's high. Let's agree that it's
high.
And then we can have an offline discussion about whether it is the highest ever on the show.
It is one of the highest ever on the show.
Niche within society.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is like why the niche criteria exists, is because this was a group of 140 people with like sort of an outsider religion, not like a mainstream million-person religion.
And I will say it's not super easy to find a ton of information on the group. Like there's, old newspapers and stuff, but like they don't even have a Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page is just for Father Yod or the documentary about the family. So that's why
if you don't have a Wikipedia page, that's it. Niche is very high.
That's why a lot of what you and I are talking about here literally comes from the primary resource of the book and the secondary resource of the documentary, which is like primary, secondary, depending on how you look at it. There are articles out there, but like a lot of articles are a little more surfacey, or it's like, it doesn't really dive into it. The articles are
about the documentary.
Yeah, there's a lot of articles about the documentary, so that also feels a little niche to me.
Yeah, for sure. High. Anti-factuality.
I mean... Again, I take issue with this criteria only because there's a difference between believing in weird shit and being anti-science.
Yeah,
they are a little anti-science in the like Western, like no Western.
I think
medicine.
It has elements. Yeah, I think like the don't go to a hospital, I would call.
But I don't know if believing in the emerald totems of Thoth or whatever is necessarily Is that anti-factuality?
Like I would definitely give that like a 6 out of 10, but it wouldn't be like a 9 out of 10 the way like anti-vax or like the closed logical loop stuff is. Like just believing in weird stuff isn't the same as like, anybody that tells you that we're wrong is evidence of the conspiracy. Like it's not the same sort of like conspiratorial.
I didn't get that sense. They have, weird beliefs. They were into home birth, which is a controversial thing. They're into homeschooling, which is a controversial thing. But I think this is more, I'm going to say medium, 6 out of 10.
I would even say like, maybe 6 out of 10. Yeah, medium. Okay, I like that. Life consumption. High. They lived on the compound. This is like why
they all lived together. Again, they all moved around together. They all married each other. They all had babies together. It was 24/7, 365. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned this at the top of the episode. This is part of why you said they're sort of the platonic ideal for a cult is because when you think about life consumption, you think about people living on a compound. When you think about niche, you think about like 140 weirdos that call themselves Aquarian. Right. Dogmatic beliefs. Did you get the impression that there was like, we're right and everybody else is wrong?
It was a little bit more like, we're right, not even think about you. Like, it's like, we're right, not even think about if you're wrong.
Yeah.
It was just, this is our thing.
I didn't get the impression of strong dogma.
Yeah. It was less like they didn't even need to worry about preventing people from having other beliefs because they were so attractive. They were so, whatever formula they had for getting people involved, it was like they got 140 people and those 140 people were dedicated and loved it and didn't want their father to stop being their spiritual leader. They didn't want to disband. Like it was less about gotta prevent people from having other thoughts or other beliefs and more about like, these are our beliefs. This is what they are. They're great, right? You like them.
Right. Yeah, I'd say dogma's low.
Yeah.
Chain of victims.
There were a lot of children born into this. They're not like 700, but there were quite a few children born into this. But I think that's kind of where the chain stops. There probably was a lot of like lateral recruiting of like, I got involved in this and I'm going to tell my friend about it and they're going to tell their friend about it. But it just kind of feels like this was essentially a single generation thing. The guy was a cult leader from 1969 to 1975, and then it kind of was around until 77. Like it's a one
and then it
generation.
Fizzled.
Yeah.
Okay, so present but low. Safe or unsafe exit, our last criterion.
I don't have a lot of information about this because, again, a lot of people who got involved were involved the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the sense that there was like a...
Wasn't there like a guy or two or somebody in the documentary I thought mentioned that he like bailed and like he didn't say that it was hard or anything.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that like if you left, it was... You're going to be excommunicated. And I also didn't get the sense that like the group like destroyed your other relationships so that you couldn't go back to them.
Yeah,
I think a lot
like
of people
the mom
could just kind of like go back to their family if they needed to.
Right.
Rather than like, oh, you have to cut off everybody in your life.
Yeah.
It was less about that and more just about the group.
So I'd say mostly safe exit. So.
And I will say again, a lot, again, we're gleaning from primary resources, so our information may be biased. Maybe it was terrible, but that's not the information we have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we also have to put some trust in the documentarian that she was trying to present unbiased.
Right.
But you're right that like obviously the group produced scrapbook is going to have some, its own point of view. Okay. So charismatic leader, not only high, but maybe the highest ever, probably the highest ever. Expected harm, we said medium. Presence of ritual, sky high. Niche, very, very high. Anti-factual, medium. Life consumption, very high. But dogma, chain of victims, and unsafe exit, low.
I mean,
So, was it a cult? Or was it just weird?
Is cult. Is cult. It's a cult.
But Kayla, we said that several of these were, like, one was medium and 3 were low. And, like, the ones that are low, okay, expected harm?
Okay, yeah.
Medium.
So it's just weird? You're saying that the Source family is just weird? Or are they a religion?
Well, they can't be a religion because that's what the niche one is for. Niche is if they score, like, high and everything else, but they're not niche, then they're a religion. Right? That's how that works.
So you think it's just weird? It might just be weird.
I mean, I think this is part of what this show is about, right? Is like, here we have an example of a group that's like a new religious movement.
Right.
That is not really that harmful. I mean, what did we call Aetherius? Didn't we Call Aetherius just weird? Or what did we call them? Because I feel like it's similar.
We might have called them a religion. I don't know.
No, they're not big enough.
We might have copped out.
Are they big enough?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows?
That was 3 months ago. I don't remember yesterday. Jesus. I don't know. It's definitely on the cusp because the places that it scores high are very high.
My inclination to call it a cult is extremely biased by its aesthetics.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, right? Like if they didn't wear flowing robes,
wore jeans.
They just like wore jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah. So I think that
But they were on a compound that like moved around.
It wasn't a compound. It was a house.
That's what a compound is.
It wasn't a compound. A compound is like where Scientology is, where it's like multiple buildings and a hole that they put people in and a cafeteria. This is a mansion that they all lived in. This is just communal living.
Does the hole have a cafeteria?
Not every commune is a compound. It may have been a compound in Hawaii. I think
this one's like really on the cusp for me.
Either answer is correct.
No, that is not the like. Come on,
cult and just weird.
On this show,
the new name of the show.
On this show, we fucking pigeonhole things. Okay, that's what we do.
Okay, well, what do you think?
I'm gonna say cult because of the robes. I agree with you. It's just because of the robes.
But do you think we should be doing that? Do you think we should be like the inclination to want to call this a cult based on aesthetics is like. That's kind of why we have this podcast is to get away from defining something as a cult based on the like, oh, it looks like a cult.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the point of the show. But I also feel like it's the type of thing where I'd be like, I would join it, but then like feel comfortable calling myself a cult. Like, yeah, man, we wear weird robes. We're a cult, but like sort of this sort of tongue-in-cheek version of admitting that, where like I don't actually think it's harmful.
The word cult is not used in the book. They actually let me read you something. My help. To Fred. So the book has an introduction by Jody Weil, who I think was either the director or also involved in the documentary.
Okay. And the intro is in the front of the book?
The introduction is in the back of the book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All of the pictures and then the introduction at the end. Like when I was going through the book and I'm like, I'm just looking at all these pretty pictures. I don't have any context. And then I got to the end and all the context at the end. I was like, okay, that's a way to do a book.
This word, I don't think it means what you think it means.
So while the word cult is not used here, different descriptors are used. So I just want to read this paragraph. And it's talking about the time in the early 70s. Like the 70s, America was in crisis, upheaval, Vietnam War, everything's crazy, blah, blah, blah. Literally thousands of intentional communities mushroomed across America, micro-societies of like-minded people who rejected the authority of corrupt institutions and long-sanctioned narratives and began to create their own. The variations were endless. Some moved to the countryside and started open-land communes. Others launched psychedelic or art communes. There were yoga communities, crafter collectives, service communes, urban and political collectives, science cooperatives, gay and group marriage communes. Many of these new groups were spiritual communities, and quite a few new religions formed around charismatic leaders. The Source family was one of these communities, born in this fraught yet fertile time.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we have content forever.
Yeah. But it's intentional communities, micro-societies, communes, collectives.
There are plenty of other words we can use. That's true. All right, fine. The new name of our show is Collective or Just Weird. Commune or Just Weird. Or we could just put them all in the cult or commune or intentional or just weird.
Spiritual community. Where you break your bones.
Let's call this a spiritual pseudo family. Let's call it.
Is it a cult or is it just weird? We're gonna be here forever.
The premise of our show, it's breaking down before my eyes.
We could do something here.
Cult.
We could do something here.
What? Are we renaming the show?
We could leave it open to the audience. We could ask them.
I hate that.
I'm saying we could ask them to tell us what they think, and then we'll see how many people say cult versus just weird, and then declare it on the next episode.
All right, let's do that. Okay. All right, but where are we going to do it? Like a Twitter poll, I guess? Because I don't want to have 100 emails.
Yeah.
So we are going to make a poll on our Twitter. Go to our Twitter account. We're just at Cult or Just Weird on Twitter, which maybe we'll have to change because we're just getting really tied up with the nomenclature here. But we'll make a poll, and you can vote, and we will tell you what the results are on the show. I think that for the purposes of, I don't want this to be you decide, because I hate that
ambiguous
shit.
top spinning.
I am going to call it a cult.
I think I am too.
But I feel bad about it.
But I can be persuaded by a passionate audience. So if you have an opinion, let us know.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, this is our first episode of the 5th season of Whatever the Fuck or Just Weird. And I'm Chris.
And I'm Kayla.
And we usually say Cult or Just Weird at this point.
But we don't know what we are anymore. So
we'll see.
We'll see you in 4 weeks.